Chapter 769. Mutually Losing Face. Chapter 769. Mutually Losing Face. Yan was cultivating ascetically in the gravitational room together with Yalin and Taimu. Whenever they took a break, they would chat about the situation of the extreme purgatory field. Through these two, his knowledge of the extreme purgatory field became better. After Yalin and Taimu found that Yan could use his true god realm cultivation base to train in the gravitational room, they didn't mock or provoke him anymore. They had stopped considering him as a small character. However, his good days didn't last long. On this day, while he was exhausted after a period of cultivation, he suddenly heard someone shouting, "Who's Yan?" In the next moment, a flow of intimidating energy wave came from the square out there. Yan hadn't reacted, yet Yalin and Taimu jolted up immediately, their faces frightened. "Who's that?" Yan was astounded, asking hurriedly. "Sir Aogu Duo." Jiemu was anxious. "Why does he want to find you?" "From his voice, I think he wants to condemn you." "Did you offend him?" Yan shook his head. "I'm not sure." Then, he stood up, frowning as he walked out of the gravitational room. A 2 meters tall beefy man stood on the square. He was wearing a dark brown armor, which made him look as formidable as a savage deity. There were 2 other warriors wearing the purgatory token, standing next to this muscular man. Besides them, Aogera, who Yan had met in the glorious Amethyst Star, also stood there. Carthu, Rochester, Delay, and Prince Du Tianlu also stormed out of their places. Du Tianlu was the younger brother of Du Tianji, king of Dark Firmament Divine Nation. He was the handsome middle-aged man who was in charge of receiving the feudal vassals from everywhere that Yan had met when he had just arrived here. That man clasped his fist with a smiling face, talking to the muscular man. "Sir Aogu Duo, why do you shout? Who is Yan?" The brawny man that was as formidable as a demogorgon shouted. His brutal eyes scanned the crowd. Warriors in his line of sight frowned, as they were all afraid of him. Aogera suddenly smiled, brightly pointing at Yan from a distance. "Turns out you're that traitor." Aogu Duo laughed ruthlessly. He grabbed something in the void, and a flow of energy like an immense sea rose up torrentially, covering Yan in just a blink. As Yan was still exhausted from his training, he had no time to recover or respond. That flow of energy covered him and held him up, bobbing high above people's heads. He was tied entirely, not able to urge any bit of his powers. Aogu Duo was one of the 5 great feudal vassals, with endless supernatural power at the original god realm. Compared to him, Yan was only at the true god realm. They were 2 whole realms apart. Under the man's attack, Yan had nothing to resist. As that energy was binding him, Yan's essence chi ancient tree seemed to be sealed. It couldn't circulate even a beam of energy. At the same time, his soul altar was hindered by a thin membrane, preventing it from rotating. This was the true god soul confinement. Aogu Duo was savagely infuriated as he laughed brutally. "Boy, you dared to join Bloody Slaughter Katua to attack Princess Ziyao? The reason why I'm late is that I had to stay and investigate this. I know everything now. I want to show you what's the big price for planning a wild scheme on Princess Ziyao." "Aogu Duo? What the heck you were playing?" Carthu frowned, his face cold. He scolded the other. "Yan has the purgatory token. I've checked it." Princess Ziyao granted him the token. Since the princess gave him the token, she must have verified him before she did that. "You should stop talking nonsense." Delay just frowned and said nothing. His face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. Rochester, one of the 5 feudal vassals, was composed, as if he was watching everything with interest. Obviously, he didn't want to join this argument. All of a sudden, Du Tianlu screamed, "Sir Aogu Duo, did you mistake him? Since Yan has the purgatory token, it proves that he has gained Ziyao's trust. Ziyao will never give the token to someone who has planned to harm her." "I'm sure you're wrong." "Haha. I'll make you guys be sincerely convinced." Aogu Duo grinned fiendishly, waving his hand all of a sudden. From a place pretty far from them, a shadow was dragged to them by some invisible force. Shortly, he appeared in people's sights. He floated face to Shi Yan in the void. That was a young human man. He was good-looking, but his eyes were anxious. Seeing Shi Yan, he was astounded for a while and then screamed. That's him. He had contacted Ka Tua and disclosed Princess Ziyao's whereabouts. That's why we could chase and blockade Princess Ziyao in the solar star exploding fragment field. Shi Yan's face was cold, looking deeply at that man with a stern countenance. This man is a henchman of bloody slaughterer Ka Tua. I met this man in the solar star exploding fragment field, where he had served Ka Tua. I had never thought that he would stand up and criticize me. Shi Yan suddenly felt chilled. He knew someone was trying to harm him. As that one couldn't kill him in the moon star, he now had another wicked plan. His eyes couldn't help but fall on Aogera, showing an uncontrollable resentment and indignation. It must be related to Aogera. He was so sure about this. For the time being, he realized that perhaps it was also related to Aogera that Ziyao was ambushed. With this thought, his heart sank into the abyss. Shi Yan understood that this mess was really serious. The others were well prepared. They even brought a witness. Apparently, they wanted to put him to death. No one could know the relationship between Shi Yan and bloody slaughterer Ka Tua. Also, he was sure that no one could overhear the conversation between him and Ka Tua in the solar star exploding fragment field. Maybe someone was worried that his scheme would be disclosed soon. He wanted to get rid of all the related persons, and Shi Yan was the most dangerous factor that he should be eliminated as soon as possible. Shi Yan became the victim in Ziyao's event. He got involved, but he knew it all now. What more do you have to say? Aogu Duo laughed brutally. We got the witness here to tell everything related to Ziyao's ambush. Let me see how you can deny it. If it is related to me, why did Princess Ziyao give me the purgatory token? If I wanted to kill her, would she get out of the solar star exploding fragment field alive? Why did Ka Tua suddenly give us up? Shi Yan contemplated, then defended himself, looking at Aogu Duo without any fear. Kid, you do know how to talk well. Haha. You earned Princess Ziyao's trust to facilitate your bigger scheme. Aogu Duo beamed a faint smile. Getting to the purgatory star and joining the extreme purgatory field is one of your conspiracies. You're a traitor. I don't know what you've planned. Anyway, killing you first is a good thing to do to prevent everything else. A flow of massive energy squeezed Shi Yan. Shi Yan suddenly felt so painful, as if a whole mountain was pressing down on him. The bones in his entire body shivered, as if he could explode at any minute. Hold on. Karthus suddenly opened his mouth. A flow of sharp energy shot out of him, falling on Shi Yan. A wild energy covered Shi Yan, creating a lot of invisible gaps. That was why Shi Yan wasn't exploded instantly. Karthu, what did you shout? I'm going to kill the Empire's traitor. What does it matter to you? Aogu Duo shouted, his face ruthless. Karthu wasn't scared at all. He just smiled coldly. He's Princess Ziyao's subordinate. If he must be executed, Princess Ziyao will handle it. Aogu Duo, aren't you trying to poke your nose in someone else's business? My nephew, Aogera, is the princess escort. I'm going to eliminate the traitor on behalf of Ziyao. Who says I'm interfering with the other's business? Aogu Duo didn't talk more. He grinned fiendishly and was about to kill Shi Yan. A traitor at the True God realm, I can kill him at any minute. When Ziyao asks about this, I will give her a proper answer. Then, Aogu Duo roared. His energy surged like a collapsing mountain. He was about to kill Shi Yan. Karthu paled, as if he was hesitant whether he would battle with Aogu Duo in the square to save Shi Yan. At that moment, his force relaxed a little bit. Shi Yan felt tense the second time, as if so many invisible hands were strangling him. His breathing became strenuous. In front of Aogu Duo at the original God realm, Shi Yan knew his realm was too low. Even if he could use all of his powers, he wasn't Aogu Duo's match. He would never have the chance to get rid of this. He rolled his eyes, gazing at Aogu Duo and Aogera. He bit his lips and squeezed out a scarlet drop of blood. His eyes were filled with wicked resentment. Boom! An earth-destroying dark energy came from nowhere, covering his entire body. Instantly, he felt like he was put back to his dark cell. He couldn't see anything. However, his painful body was relaxed in the dark. Shi Yan didn't feel pain anymore. The tremendous flow of energy that came from Aogu Duo was washed away like the low tide. It disappeared shortly, as the aura Aogu Duo put on him was swept away. At this moment, Aogu Duo's angry voice came from outside. Leona, why does it matter to you? You shouldn't poke your nose in the other's business. I interfere in your business. So what? Leona's cold and wicked voice arose. In the next moment, Shi Yan suddenly heard Aogera screaming painfully, as if someone had just slapped him in the face. Leona, you hit my nephew? Did you want to fight with me? Aogu Duo was enraged, shouting and screaming wildly. Oh yeah, I think I need a lesson. Leona was still composed. Aogera tried to harm me. I want to capture him. You're his uncle. Perhaps you're involved in this too. I want to investigate both of you. At this point, the darkness was suddenly lifted. The power controlling Shi Yan disappeared, leaving no trace at that instant. Shi Yan now floated in the air. He stooped and found Leona and Aogu Duo facing each other. There was no surging energy in them. However, their eyes had ignited with an unknown flame of endless fighting will. The blonde Aogera had blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. One of his cheeks had a bloody handprint. He was so mad, his eyes full of grudges as he was looking at Leona. That woman didn't even glare at Aogera. Her stiff mount showed her bloodthirsty and cold intentions. It looked like she could devour the light around her. Her surroundings slowly darkened until not even a single beam of light remained. Chapter 770. Within 100 years, I will take the head on your neck. Chapter 770. Within 100 years, I will take the head on your neck. Leona and Aogu Duo were opposing each other with equal harshness, as if they could battle at any minute. Since they were both feudal vassals of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, they had to compete every day. Not long after Leona became a feudal vassal, she had suppressed Aogu Duo to become the strongest commander, with the strongest force among the feudal vassals. This irritated Aogu Duo a lot. Today, Leona had interfered in his dealings with an anonymous kid. In his eyes, this was naked provocation. Experts with a status and position like him would never let anyone provoke him like that. Thus, he was enraged. He would take Leona to make everyone understand that he was the top feudal vassal of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. In front of their confrontation, many people kept their mouths shut. Carthu, Rochester, and Delay were calm and silent. They just watched, not bothering to give them advice or dig things further, as if they also wanted to see who was stronger. In this place, the only person who could talk was Prince Du Tianlu. However, his realm was a little low, only at the third sky of King God realm. While the two were facing each other fiercely, he had to stay away, as he was afraid that he would be involved in their battle. Shi Yan felt pain in his whole body. He looked down with deep hatred and resentment in his eyes. In front of so many people, Aogu Duo had restrained him and given him a possible crime. He almost couldn't survive. Too humiliating. Since he had revealed his talents in the Grace mainland, he had never been humiliated like this. The anger in his heart right now was inexplicable. However, Shi Yan understood that with his current realm, he couldn't resist Aogu Duo to take his face back. The time he had spent in there was too short. He hadn't mingled well in this star area. Without an organization and his realm being low, he didn't even have the right to voice here. Quietly watching what was happening under his feet, Shi Yan's eyes gradually became resolute. His enthusiasm had been triggered. He needed time. He strongly believed that if he had enough time to grow, one day, he would make all of those who had disdained him shiver in fright. He would make Aogu Duo regret and pay a big price for what he had done to him today. When the other two's confrontation was tense, Prince Du Tianlu suddenly screamed. Wait a minute. Everyone couldn't help but look at him, including Leona and Aogu Duo, who were about to attack each other. They all stopped, frowning at him and waiting for him to talk. The king says, no confrontation. Du Tianlu was holding a special metal token with a crown carved on it in his hand. It didn't look like silver or gold. He caressed the crown and touched it again. A flow of magical soul fluctuation shot out of the crown, which diverged and then fell on Leona and Aogu Duo respectively. The two then quieted down and bent their bodies, as if they were listening to the king's advice. Not long after that, the soul fluctuation from the crown in Du Tianli's hand gradually vanished. At this moment, Leona and Aogu Duo stood upright, glaring at each other, then snorted at the same time. Du Tianli laughed evilly. As the 5 great feudal vassals are all here, we can start the Extreme Purgatory Fields training. He suddenly pitched his voice, then threw the crown in his hand into the air. A magical energy scattered, falling on the purgatory tokens on the waists of all the contestants. At the same time, clusters of light shot out from the surrounding monster-shaped mountains one by one. Each of the clusters confined an extreme inmate, flying towards an area far from the square. Shuryen skimmed over and found at least 200 prisoners with different realms being delivered to somewhere. The lowest realm among them was the first sky of King God Realm. Some were even at the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base. They were being dragged towards the extreme purgatory field under an unknown force. A magical energy fluctuation emitted from the purgatory token on his waist. It seemed like some seal had been lifted. Anyone with the purgatory token can join this competition. The purgatory token on your waist is the key to entering the field. Once you get in the extreme purgatory field, you can't get out before the time is up. Du Tianlu lifted his head and explained slowly. There are no rules in the extreme purgatory field. You can kill anyone. Prisoners, contestants, even your partners. At the end, who kills the most will have a chance to meet the king and receive the rewards. The tokens on your waists have the life-sensing power. You can detect your prey's location with its help. Assess your power, then choose your praise. Leona and Aogu Duo didn't talk, just quietly listening to Du Tianlu. No one knew what Du Tianji had told them using his soul energy. But the 2 hostile feudal vassals had calmed down and said nothing. It seemed like Leona had never hit Aogera, and Aogu Duo had never set up any conspiracy against Shuryen. Carthu, Rochester, and Delay were busy giving advice and making arrangements for their people. Shuryen noticed that Demang also had a purgatory token on his waist. Apparently, he was one of the contestants. Delay was his father. He used to have 2 quotas, which he had assigned to 2 warriors under his command. He had another arrangement for Demang, which was Ziyao's quota. But it failed. Thus, Delay had no other way around but to make one of his subordinates hand back the token so that Demang could join the extreme purgatory field to train himself. Besides Delay, Aogera also had 1 token. His token was granted by his uncle Aogu Duo. Aogu Duo had 3 quotas, of which he gave his nephew 1. It was because Ziyao had given Shuryen Aogera's quota. Among the 5 feudal vassals, since Leona and Aogu Duo had achieved the biggest attainments, they had 3 quotas each. The other 3 vassals had 2. Since Ziyao had 1 quota, the total contestants entering the extreme purgatory field this time were 13. At this moment, a contestant holding the purgatory token started to move. Leona was talking to her 3 warriors with a cold visage. Her bloodthirsty green eyes often glared at Aogu Duo and his contestants. Most of the time, she gazed at Aogera. She seemed to instruct her warriors to kill Aogera and the other 2 warriors of Aogu Duo's team in the extreme purgatory field. Aogu Duo was grinning fiendishly, as he didn't show that his team was weaker than her team. Apparently, he had the same thought as Leona, that they would compete again in the extreme purgatory field. Shuryen, let's go. Taimu laughed, then left Carthu together with Yalan, waving at him. Shuryen curled his lips into a smile, walking towards Taimu and Yalan. However, he didn't hasten to leave just yet. Quite the contrary, he paused, looking at Aogu Duo and Aogera over there. He pondered, then said calmly, Master Aogu Duo, all the humiliation I had to bear today, I will give it back to you 10 times in the future. Aogu Duo sneered disdainfully. With just you? What are you? Haha, kid, basically, you won't get out of the extreme purgatory field alive. Shuryen was calm, pointing at the sky and talking faintly. Shuryen, Swear that within 100 years, I will take the head on your neck, Aogu Duo. Otherwise, within 100 years, I will kill myself on the spot. Everybody was shaken, looking at him disbelievingly. Their eyes showed that what they just heard was unbelievable. 100 years was just a short period for a true God Realm warrior to break through the King God Realm. Many people couldn't enter the original God Realm, no matter how hard they had tried during their whole life. And Aogu Duo was at the second sky of original God Realm. Did Shiryen lose his mind when he made his pledge? Aogu Duo laughed as he was crazy. Good, good. I want to see if you can even live for 100 years or not. Ha ha ha. Shiryen wasn't affected. He pointed at Aogera, talking as if no one else was surrounding him. I'll kill you in the extreme purgatory field. If you dare, get in there. Everybody looked at him dazedly, as if he were an insane person. He was only at the true God realm. Among the contestants, his realm was the lowest. And Aogera was at the second sky of King God realm, a famous young expert. Today, in front of the 5 great feudal vassals and Prince Du Tianlu, Shiryen said that he wanted to kill Aogera in the extreme purgatory field. Was it a funny joke? Killing Aogu Duo within 100 years, killing Aogera in the extreme purgatory field. His rampancy and arrogance had stunned people. They all looked at him with odd faces, as they thought that this young man was quite crazy and funny. However, they couldn't smile on seeing his resolute countenance. Apparently, he wasn't just joking. Although he had no tremendous aura on his body, the impression he gave the others wasn't ordinary. I'll wait for you there. Aogera's eyes became dark and sinister. If you dare to find me. Sir Aogu Duo, please try to restrain your sorrow and go with the flow to prepare a good coffin for your nephew. Shiryen smiled and chinned up, then walked away. He passed by Yalin and Tai Mu, who were petrified, heading towards the extreme purgatory field. Aogu Duo put on a cold face while his eyes were flared up with fire. He continually sneered. Aogera, if you can't torture that kid to death in the extreme purgatory field, I don't have a nephew like you. Don't worry, uncle. I'll make him taste all the pains and sorrows of this world. I will use the fantasy stone to record the scene of his demise. You can save it and watch later, Aogera said deliberately and arrogantly. Go. I'm waiting for your good news. Aogu Duo waved his hand. Aogera and the other 2 warriors bent to say goodbye, then flew up in Shiryen's direction. Aogu Duo, wanna bet with me? Leona said, I'm going to use the next life star to bet with you. I bet that your nephew will die and Shiryen will survive. Carthu, Delay, Rochester, and Du Tianlu were baffled. They disbelievingly looked at the infamous woman whose brutal reputation had been spread wide. They had no idea why she favored Shiryen that much. Did she just simply want to compete with Aogu Duo? Anyway, using a life star for that, was she insane? I'll play with you. Aogu Duo shouted, his face ferocious. Chapter 771, Leaving Alone. Chapter 771, Leaving Alone. Shiryen didn't know that Leona had used him to make a big bet with Aogu Duo. Using an entire life star to bet was something rare even here. After leaving the mountain range, Shiryen turned into a bunch of light, flying rapidly towards the extreme purgatory field as guided by his purgatory token. Yalin and Tai Mu followed behind him, gazing at his back with fear. Soon, Yalin and Tai Mu had caught up with him with their second sky of King God Realm. Kid, are you crazy? Aogera is at the second sky of King God Realm. Even we aren't sure whether we can kill him or not. You've just reached the true God Realm. Tai Mu tilted his head, eyeing him strangely. Even if you want to compete with him, you shouldn't make it so explicit, should you? It isn't different from asking Aogera to kill you in the extreme purgatory field, is it? Shiryen frowned, talking in a low tone. I believe that I can make Aogera not be able to leave the extreme purgatory field alive. He had his confidence after all. Taking Aogu Duo's head within 100 years. You do have the guts. Yalin appraised him, shaking her head disbelievingly. No need to mention you. In the entire Dark Firmament Divine Nation, besides our king, I don't know who can say those words like you. Even Madame Leona doesn't have such confidence. This was something Yalin just couldn't believe. Aoguduo was one of the 5 great feudal vassals. In the divine nation, he was just under 1 person, but above tens of thousands of people. His competence and the force under his command were extremely mighty. He had so many brutal subordinates as well. Even if he could reach the same realm as Aoguduo without a crazily strong background, he shouldn't even dream of defeating Aoguduo, let alone killing him. Original God Realm experts had their own ways to protect themselves. In case they couldn't resist anymore, they could always escape easily. Aoguduo was a second sky of Original God Realm warrior. If someone wanted to kill him, he should be at least at the 3rd sky of Original God Realm. Only having 1 rank higher could guarantee the desired result. This whole vast divine nation had only 1 warrior at the 3rd sky of Original God Realm, who was also the king of the country, King Du Tianji. The number of experts who were at the 3rd sky of Original God Realm cultivation base in the entire Raging Flame Star area could be counted with one's fingers. Each of them was the tyrant of an area or the freaky hermits, about whom no one knew whether they were still alive or not. Compared to such existences, Shuryen at the True God Realm was just a tiny ant. The high sky in front of him still hid so many unknown dangers. Saying that he could kill Aoguduo within 100 years wasn't arrogant. It was idiotic. Thus, no matter how high Yalin had evaluated Shuryen, she didn't think that he had any basis for his haughty words. She thought he was mad at Aoguduo, so he spoke up idiotically. Hearing Yalin, Taimu beamed a forced smile while shaking his head. Although he didn't mock the other, his attitude and countenance were saying that he totally agreed with Yalin. He didn't believe that Shuryen could fulfill his pledge. Shuryen didn't explain further, just accelerating towards the extreme purgatory field with cold eyes and a composed visage. Groups of prisoners were driven by some unknown force and moved into the extreme purgatory field. From time to time, a bunch of light darted by Shuryen, Yalin, and Taimu. They all headed to a different side of the extreme purgatory field. The extreme purgatory field was a vast place, situated on half of the purgatory star. Dangers hid in the mountains, lakes, and immense forests in this area. Through Yalin and Taimu, Shuryen got to know that highly authorized staff had created the barriers, formations, and restrictions in this area. They said that the extreme purgatory field was a magical formation in itself, which had snatched the control of nature. With the additional barriers and restrictions, it became one of the most dangerous areas in the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. Even without competition and the villains of the Raging Flame Star area, warriors entering this area would encounter a lot of dangers. They had to be cautious about countering the man-made traps. This area had so many terrifying places, which were much harsher than even the cold, dark outer space. Anyway, the most dangerous place often hid the best fortunate encounters. The extreme purgatory field was a place like that. The purgatory token in his hand flashed suddenly as Shuryen turned into a bunch of light, which was then dragged into an ash-gray halo instantly. When his body appeared in that place, his soul altar was shaken hard. A light of surprise flashed in his eyes as he beamed a happy smile. The rumor was true. Staying in this place, Shuryen didn't use any bit of his energy to comprehend the star, space, or death and life power Upanishads, but he still felt so sensitive to them. The extreme purgatory field seemed to have an invisible energy that couldn't be seen or sensed by naked eyes and soul. In this place circled by that miraculous energy, any warrior could gain a deeper understanding of his own power Upanishad. Holding his breath and concentrating, Shuryen instinctively let his soul sink into the power Upanishad tier in his soul altar. The 3 powers Upanishad rippled with miraculous energy fluctuations. This kind of a fluctuation could resonate with some energy in the extreme purgatory field. Shortly, his sensibility of space, star, death, and life powers Upanishad was connected. He instantly felt like he was sinking in the center of the magnetic exploding space, where space power twisted wildly. The death and life intent domain proactively overflowed without the soul to guide them. In this moment, he felt like he had gotten back to the solar star exploding fragment field, where he had used the death and life power Upanishad to heal Ziyao. Although he couldn't see the sun, moon, or stars in the gray sky of this area, his star martial spirit was working miraculously. Shuryen concentrated on sensing more, sending his soul to the star martial spirit. He felt like he was taking a trip to the immense starry sky and was sensitive enough to feel the trajectory of each star. In this marvelous place, Shuryen didn't think about anything else. He just closed his eyes and felt. He found that he could approach his power Upanishad endlessly. He could visualize the most mysterious changes of the heaven and earth. If he could quiet down and comprehend, the benefit it could bring to his realm would be immeasurable. Swoosh, swoosh. Two silhouettes landed next to him. Shuryen turned around and found Yalin and Taimu. Those two warriors under Karthu's command stood next to him and squinted, their faces passionate. Just like him, they closed their eyes and silently comprehended their powers. Such a magical place. The rumor's true. If we can cultivate here forever, our understanding of the realm would be formidably profound. Oh, I don't want to leave this place ever. Taimu laughed with a happy countenance. Thank you, Master Karthu. He gave us his quotas. If I can survive this extreme purgatory field, I think I will absolutely break through to the third sky of King God realm. Good thought, anyway, Yalin snorted. Don't you know that the extreme purgatory field will open once every 50 years? Every time it opens, it lasts only for 3 years. Do you know how tremendous a quantity of materials we have to use to keep it open for 3 years? Yeah? Taimu looked like he didn't know anything. Shuryen was surprised. He stopped concentrating his mind, looking at Yalin seriously. I heard that the extreme purgatory field's an incomparably magical formation. It could convert the power of nature. However, it requires an enormous amount of energy and materials to maintain it. I heard that it needs at least 10,000 pieces of divine crystals for each year. And they must be the medium-quality pieces. Besides, it requires so many kinds of materials. Some of them are so rare that only the land of God punishment could have them. Yalin paused for a while and then continued. When our master came here, didn't you see that he brought a large number of materials? Where do you think they would ship them? I'm telling you, they will be consumed all in the extreme purgatory field. Shuryen was stunned on listening to her. He immediately got why Leona's battleships carried a massive amount of materials. They must be used to maintain the extreme purgatory field. It consumed 10,000 divine crystals each year, along with so many other rare materials. To retain this magnificent formation for 3 years, how big should the amount of the required materials be? No wonder why the quotas to enter the extreme purgatory field were too little. Delay only had 2, and a noble princess like Ziyao only had 1. Suddenly, he felt grateful to Ziyao for giving him a chance. The quota he had was snatched from Aogera's hand. The value of a purgatory token perhaps was much more precious than an amethyst battleship. Shuryen, do you want to go with us or leave alone? After explaining to the two men, Yalin hesitated for a while and then asked. Your realm is too low. Walking alone in this perilous place will be too risky. If you go with us, we can back up each other. At least, Aogera can't kill you shortly. She actually meant good for him. Taimu grinned. Yeah, we should go together. Besides the experts from the other feudal vassals, those villains won't dare to trespass on us here. We can kill them slowly. What do you think? During the time in the gravitational field, Shuryen and these two had talked and become familiar with each other. It seemed like Karthu had advised them to protect him for a while. However, Shuryen didn't appreciate their treatment. He just smiled and slightly bent his body. I will keep your goodwill in my heart. But I'm getting here to train myself. If I go with you, you will shield me from dangers, so I won't actually be able to train myself then. Yeah, we should part here. Don't worry about me. If I have the guts to get in the extreme purgatory field, of course, I have means to protect myself. Are you sure? Taimu was a little bit worried. Aogera wants to kill you, and he isn't alone. The other two from Aogu Duo's team aren't good people either. When they go together, not many people dare to provoke them in the extreme purgatory field. Do you believe in yourself that much? Yalin snorted while frowning. Shuryen smiled and clasped his fist to greet them, then changed the direction, leaving alone. His figure flashed, then disappeared into the gap between two grand mountains. After a while, he disappeared completely from their sights. Chapter 772. Seek Battle. Chapter 772. Seek Battle. Inside the extreme purgatory field, Yalin and Taimu knitted their brows tightly, looking in the general direction where Shiryen had left. They contemplated for a while. Master asked us to notice and see if he has any mysteries. Turns out our master has wronged him. Yalin talked with a strange countenance. He assumed that Shiryen would go with us. But he's underestimated his arrogance. Perhaps it's fearless ignorance. You say, did he know our intentions? That's why he didn't want to go with us, asked Taimu. Yalin shook her head. I don't know, but I'm sure this man isn't simple. He has some big secrets. Or else, with his true god realm cultivation base, it's impossible to be so haughty. You know, the time we were in the gravitational room, Taimu's eyes flared with a strange light. Yeah, he's not that simple. I have never met any true god realm warriors who have such powerful physique. If he can break through to the king god realm and condense the god body with his current body, perhaps, he can give Aogera a painful headache. This Aogera is so disgusting. If we meet him, we should tear his face too. Yalin snorted. I don't know why Ziyao accepted him. Would she aim at Aogu Duo, his uncle? Maybe. Being princes and princesses, they have their special concerns. No one could read the king's mind. It seems he would let his children fight against each other until someone dies. Then he will choose his heir, the one who can suppress all of his or her siblings with great talents. In his eyes, perhaps only a character like that could bring the divine nation to a more prosperous future. Taimu shook his head, sighing. Under his tacit agreement, princes and princesses are trying to gather forces to subdue the others. I don't know if this kind of competition is good or bad. I think Shiryen won't have a good ending. I heard Prince Dufeng went missing. Princess Ziyao is a woman. In the divine nation, we've never had a ruling queen. Princess Ziyao's future will be troublesome. Yalin was a little discontented with the divine nation's gender discrimination. We're just normal citizens, we can't control that much. I just hope that our master would make a right decision. Or else, we're also involved. Taimu beamed a forced smile. Yalin didn't talk more. They prepared for a while, sending the soul consciousness to the token to sense. Then, they left in the opposite direction to Shiryen. The extreme purgatory field was extremely vast with endless rivers, mountain ranges, big lakes, and forest with luxuriant forests. Shiryen strolled aimlessly in the dark forest with 100-meter diameter trees. He had sent his soul consciousness into the purgatory token to sense. The extreme purgatory field was said to be a great formation of the ancient time. In this place, soul consciousness was limited. Even his soul consciousness added with space power seemed to be restrained by some invisible power. Shiryen could only feel the living beings within 1 mile around. His soul consciousness wasn't as good as the purgatory token in this area. Each participant had a purgatory token, which they could use to sense the living energy of creatures around within the scale of 5 miles. Within 5 miles, as long as there were magnetic fields of living beings, the contestants could detect them via the purgatory token. Since this token was stronger than his soul consciousness, in this forest, Shiryen considered it his main secret treasure to sense around. Of course, it didn't include the other participants. Warriors with the purgatory token could prevent the others from detecting him using the soul consciousness. In other words, Shiryen could only sense the hazardous inmates not Yalin, Taimu, or Aogera, who also held the purgatory token. Anyway, they were also the participants, who came here to train their realm and hunt the inmates down. The divine nation didn't encourage the contestants to kill each other. And they neither had any document to prohibit this activity. In case they met their enemies in the extreme purgatory field and wanted to kill the others, the divine nation wouldn't care about that. The winner will get the throne. It's always been the principle of the divine nation. Because of bloody competitions, the divine nation had earned their today's attainment. Each of them had kept the smell of blood and fighting desire in their hearts, so as they could resist and battle against the 9-star Chamber of Commerce or the Underworld League. A flow of soul consciousness was sent into the purgatory token, creating an invisible connection with his soul. Shi sauntered in the vast forest. He hadn't detected any commotions of the prisoners. Prisoners put into the extreme purgatory field were all at the king god realm, from the first sky to the third sky. There were several hundred of them in this place. However, the extreme purgatory field was endlessly vast. It wasn't easy to meet several hundred people scattering in this area. Shi didn't hasten. The soul consciousness he had sent into the purgatory token was still sensing for living beings within 5 miles around. At the same time, he had released his soul consciousness to sense the commotions around him. His soul consciousness was special with the support of space power. As long as a tiny energy movement was made, he would get it immediately. Along his way, Shi found at least 6 areas with signs of faint energy. From Taimu and Yalin, he knew that the extreme purgatory field had so many perilous areas. If the inmates and the participants were careless entering there, they would have big trouble, or even have their souls vanish. Thus, whenever he detected strange energy fluctuations, he would proactively stay away. Shi wouldn't take risks. When he reached a bared hill, he stopped, sat down neatly on the peak, looking forward. Strange drawings and patterns were carved under his feet. They were the restrictions and barriers he had learned from the blacksmith's secrets of success in the dark magnetic noxious mist. He knew how to make the magical formations, restrictions, and barriers that naked eyes couldn't see. Only some special soul consciousness could sense them. Shi had set up this formation at the edge of the mountain range. Staying in there, and with the hindrance provided naturally with the mist, people from the outside couldn't see anything but a dim place where naked eyes couldn't see through. Sitting on the peak of the hill, Shi looked nonchalantly at the further distance. He could only see peaks of mountains jutted in the clouds. Gray clouds and brown clouds hovered in those areas. From the far distance, they looked like a gloomy quilt. Touching his forehead, Shi's soul flew into the soul altar of the heaven flames. Shi sent his thought. Is your soul consciousness also affected in this area? Yes. The heaven flames sent him the same thought. It meant this area was somehow special with a magical power that could hinder the soul consciousness. Even the peculiar living beings like the heaven flames couldn't sense the commotions around clearly. Frowning, Shi suddenly shouted, "You guys scatter, staying 5 miles close to me. Watch everywhere for me. I need to stay quiet for a while." Flames of heaven flames flew out from Shi's soul altar. Shortly, they disappeared. Heaven flames were his hidden trick. At the critical moment, they could help him overturn the situation, turning from defeat to victory. Besides, he could use them as his guards. Since the heaven flames and Shi were interlinked, once they sensed danger, they could send the information to his soul directly. Shi would have more time to prepare. After the heaven flames had left, Shi gradually quieted down. He kept a flow of soul consciousness in the purgatory token. Sitting on this barren hill, he cleared his mind, making his soul empty while paying attention to the power Upanishad tier, trying to take advantages of the resonance in this place. Relaxed his mind, Shi didn't think about the other burdens. His face was calm as he closed his eyes. His aura retreated little by little until he was like a motionless rock that seemed to be there for 10,000 years. Gradually, his living energy fluctuation also disappeared. Shi understood his weakness, low realm. With the true God realm cultivation base, killing Aogera was a tough task, especially when Aogera wasn't alone. If Shi had to meet them shortly, he would have no chance to win. He believed that he could break through to the king god realm shortly. That's why he dared to boast his arrogant words. With his innate background, when he broke into the king god realm, his power Upanishad could advance to the god domain. At the same time, he could get the god body. Shi believed that even Aogera, who had the second sky of king god realm cultivation base, even he couldn't be his rival. He has this confidence. Many prisoners and participants in the extreme purgatory field would become the resources for him to get stronger. In this place, he could step into the sky, advancing to the new level. Shi closed his eyes, staying atop the barren hill. He was using the miracle features of the extreme purgatory field to relax and focus on his power Upanishad comprehension. Shuryen didn't notice how time flies out there. 10 miles away from Shuryen's location, 3 one-eyed prisoners stood shoulder by shoulder, alertly watching here and there. These 3 people were at the first sky of King God realm. They seemed to be condemned for a serious crime. Not only was one of their eyes taken, but they had also been carved with the terrifying inmate mark on their faces, which indicated their soon-to-be-executed status. The 3 of them were from the Sea Clan, which were rare in outer space. They had fish scales on their necks. They were almost 3 meters tall, wearing ragged garments. Their deep green eyes were cautiously watching everywhere. Their bizarre eyes also showed their ferocious features. They were all alert as they knew that they were the prey of the participants. Once they meet a strong contestant, they would be killed soon, becoming the war achievement of the other. Thus, on the way there, they had always tried to avoid the areas where experts might gather. They only aimed at the quiet and isolated areas to go. While they didn't recognize it, they had entered the area where Shuryen was staying. Although Shuryen's purgatory token hadn't reported him the living energy fluctuation, the Ain spirit ghost flame, one of the heaven flames, had found them. The immense blue flame squeezed itself on a leaf of a giant tree that kept it from the others' views. Those 3 King God realm warriors didn't see anything abnormal. They still headed toward Shuryen. The Ain spirit ghost flame had sent its thought directly to Shuryen's soul altar. As Shuryen had just immersed in the miracle state not for long, he hadn't comprehended enough the mysteries of this place. He woke up all of a sudden with shaken appearance. Which realm? Stronger than you by a little bit. According to human warrior classification, they should be at the first sky of King God realm. However, they have 3. I'm not sure you can handle them, said the Ain spirit ghost flame. 3. Shuryen was startled. He hesitated for a while then said, only bloody battles could help learn the powers faster. These 3 come here in good time. Then, there they are. He stood up, took a deep breath then touched the void. Barriers and restrictions around him disappeared, showing a way. He sauntered, his face calm and cold while fierce fighting was surging in his eyes. Chapter 773, A Much Valuable Battle. Chapter 773, A Much Valuable Battle. A big lake that looked like a clear shining mirror was situated in the corner of the Purgatory Star. This lake was so crystal clear that people could see its bottom. Conical mountains surrounded this lake. Those mountains weren't too high as they were around 1,000 meters more or less. Observation pavilions were built on each mountain. Beautiful maids and guards were serving the powerful officials of the divine nation. At this moment, Du Tianlu and the 5 feudal vassals Leona, Aogu Duo, Carthu, Rochester, and Delay were sitting neatly in different luxury pavilions to enjoy good food and wine. The 5 feudal vassals had their retinues standing by their sides. They didn't say anything, but they were allowed to enjoy the food and wine with their masters. Du Tianlu smiled tenderly. He stooped, looking at the lake underneath. A strange crown sparkled in his hand. It radiated beams of light shooting directly into the lake. After the strange light shot into the crystal lake, it changed magically. Images started to appear on the lake. The extreme purgatory field on the other side of the Purgatory Star became the images projected on the lake surface. Layers of mountain ranges, large lakes, murmuring rivers and streams, and vast luxuriant forests were projected gradually. Even the lowest positions were shown clearly. This lake was a giant mirror that was transferring what was happening in the extreme purgatory field to this place. Everybody standing on the surrounding mountains could see the details of the battles taking place in the extreme purgatory field. At this moment, the lake mirror was showing some fierce battles. Aogera was the outstanding contestant, who had already started to hunt inmates in the forest. Aogera and the other 2 warriors under Aogu Duo were coldly surrounding 2 prisoners at a mountain foot. Those 2 prisoners were at the second sky of King God realm. At this moment, they were hurt badly, and they were trying with their last breaths to run away. Aogera was deliberate even though he was busy. A gleam of arrogance sparkled in his eyes. He laughed like a howling hungry wolf gazing at one of the 2 prisoners. The other two subordinates of Aogu Duo were joining hands to kill the other. They were all calm, just like a hawk eyeing a sheep on the ground. Shortly, they stormed over with brutal deeds. They used clusters of scorching light to block the man and torture him to death. Aogera's battle also ended shortly. When his god domain expanded, people could see a glorious gold halo rippling like water, extending everywhere. Wherever his gold light crossed through, everything was smashed. Ancient trees, big rocks, and even the rivers were exploded. The sharp gold energy had swept everything away as easy as breaking the dried branches of a tree. The warrior, who had the same realm as Aogera, was blockaded in his god domain. Shortly, the gold halo bound him. Frightening bleeding cuts appeared thickly on his god body. That man resisted hard. He released his god domain, which created a pressing energy wave. Aogera faced the sky and shouted. The gold energy on his body slashed down from the sky like a sharp golden sword showering the land. When Aogera used his true power, his entire body was covered in a gold nimbus, giving people a brutal and vicious feeling that he could fiercely crush everything into pieces. Bunches of gold energy light shot out from him, breaking that prisoner's god domain. The bleeding cuts on his body also exploded at once. Instantly, that man became a bloody corpse, as if he had been executed with a 10,000-cut sentence. His death was terribly pathetic. Aogera had been nonchalant from the beginning. He didn't even bother to look at the dead man, spat, mumbled something, then leaped up. His figure flashed, and he gathered with his two other teammates. They continued hunting. The lake was projecting the same battle, which was happening with the three young people of Leona's team. All three had a bloody aura. Their eyes were wild and brutal. They looked like the devils in hell, just like their master. Bloody murderous aura shot up to the sky. The pupils of the only woman in that team of three showed a frightening faint color. The onlookers didn't know what secret technique she was cultivating, but on her way, murderous aura had condensed into real entities, turning into a dozens of meters blood python. It was animated and lively like a real object. It stuck its tongue out, facing the sky, emitting a tremendous energy fluctuation. The woman who used to mock Yen hid her hands in her sleeves, strolling as if she was taking a walk in her garden. And she just sauntered behind her blood python like that. The python was like a real beast. Whenever it sensed signs of living beings, it would savagely dash away. This bloodthirsty commotion froze the prisoners, making them unable to run. Shortly, the python had swallowed 3 prisoners. After 1 hour, the python would open its big mouth and spit out a bloody skeleton. The flesh on the skeleton seemed to be butchered. Extremely horrible. No one could resist this woman on her way. She hadn't performed any attack, but using only a blood python she had condensed from the bloodthirsty murderous aura. She had made the inmates snacks for her python. Experts of Carthew's and Rochester's teams hadn't encountered enemies yet. High Realm prisoners had avoided them proactively, as if they knew those 4 people weren't easy to mess with. They had tried their best to stay away from them. Demeng, son of Delay, had the peak of true god realm. However, the beasts flew out of his soul altar were all formidable. On his way, he didn't need to move his hands. People ran away as soon as they saw his beasts. Demeng was at the peak of true god realm like Yen. His path was smooth, and he hadn't had a chance to show his talents. The experts sitting in the mountains to watch the fun shown in the lake all concentrated on the battles in the mirror. Ah! Du Tianle suddenly screamed. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he focused on an isolated area. The blood crown on his hand sparkled. The area he was watching was zoomed in so many times. Everything there became clearer. Leona, Aogu Duo, Carthew, Rochester, and Delay, the 5 great feudal vassals, became interested in that scene. Their eyes like electric strikes shot at that area. Yan's figure appeared clearly in that area. At this moment, he was dashing crazily from the hill toward the 3 Sea Clan prisoners that the Een Spirit Ghost Flame had sensed. Haha, a whole life star. Interesting. Interesting. I should watch carefully. Rochester laughed noisily. His eyes skimmed through Leona and Aogu Duo. Delay was shaken. He had a concealed gleam of hope in his eyes, as if he hated that he couldn't make sure Yen bury his body in the extreme purgatory field, and that the young man would never be able to get out of the extreme purgatory field alive. Carthu slightly frowned. Haha, that boy doesn't have a good fortune. Seems Aogera won't need to take action. But I think he got good luck now. If he meets Aogera, he will die in the worst way. Aoguduo received the strong liquor the maid served him. He gulped several mouthfuls, laughing loudly. Leona wore a cold and sinister face. Her eyes were as sharp as icicles. She beamed a faint smile. Are you blind? Don't you see that Shiryan's the one who proactively takes action? Yeah, that kid has taken action first. 1-on-3, people. And his opponents are the King God Realm experts. Is he insane? Does he have any tremendous background? Du Tianlu continued, then took a sip of his wine, his eyes strange. He's a madman. Wahaha. Dares to boast arrogantly, saying that he would kill me within 100 years. Isn't that crazy? Aoguduo finished a bottle of strong wine and threw it away. That bottle exploded in the air. He bared his teeth. His craziness appeared on his face. Who dares say to kill me within 100 years in the divine nation? I've been moving unhindered around the universe for years. I've seen so many different characters. He's just an ant. That Motherf * Kerr is telling jokes. He was still holding on to what Shiryan had bragged. He couldn't just let it go no matter what. If I want to kill you, no need to wait for 100 years, my dear. As long as our king nods his head, I'll kill you. Leona smiled coldly like a devil, snapping back. Try me. Aoguduo was enraged, his face ferocious. Haha, don't think that because you're ranked over me means you can actually defeat me. When I, Aoguduo, had topped the feudal vassals, you were still struggling to be a feudal vassal. If the king didn't notice you, you Motherf * Kerr, you would have died in my hands already. I do hope that the king would agree, so then I can cut your head off and make a nice chamber pot. Leona laughed like crazy. Her dark green eyes were filled with bloodthirsty intentions. Guys, could you please quiet down so we can watch the battle? Carthu, rubbing his forehead, couldn't help but scream. Du Tianlu also advised them with his soft voice. You've made a bet already. Just calm down and watch it. It's a whole life star, you know. You should pay attention. Don't be hurried. Hearing him, Leona and Aoguduo snorted in unison, then stopped quarreling. Their look fell on the lake underneath again to watch the clear scene projected. At this moment, Shiryan had faced the 3 Sea Clan prisoners. Their eyes locked. Sparks shot everywhere. Dark firmament star. Deep inside the vast, grand palace sat on the throne a tall and sturdy man wearing brocade clothes. He looked at something in front of him. Zia sat cross-legged next to him, her beautiful eyes gazed at something. A magical mirror appeared in the middle of the hall, which showed Shiryan and the 3 Sea Clan prisoners. Is that him? The man frowned, asking all of a sudden. Are you sure he and the other have some relations? It's true. Their powers Upanishad are alike, the soul burial ground, Ziyao confirmed. The man nodded, grinning faintly. Interesting. I need to watch carefully. If we can use him, he will be a sharp sword of the divine nation. I hope he would be like what you say, outstanding will and persistence. About his shallow cultivation base, it's all right. We can increase him gradually. The most important feature of a warrior is his fighting will. I need to watch carefully then. Father, you won't be disappointed. Ziyao said anxiously as she was praying that Shiryan could debut better and surprise the others. That would make them appreciate him. It seemed his performance this time would determine his death or life and his future. Chapter 774. Rip the Sky. Chapter 774. Rip the Sky. It was out of Shiryan's expectation that the 3 prisoners were more excited than he was when Shiryan appeared. The inmate marks on the faces of those one-eyed Sea Clan prisoners twisted as they were laughing crazily and excitedly. God loves the 3 of us. Yes, it's God's love for us. Our first encounter is a lone warrior. And he is only the true God realm cultivation base. Haha, it's so good. At least one of us can survive this time. The 3 Sea Clan prisoners were cheered up as they found the other had only the true God realm cultivation base. They were stimulated, screaming strangely. They didn't wait until Shuryen stopped moving, storming toward him. King God Realm experts had the God domain, and those three weren't an exception. As they were the warriors of the Sea Clan, most of them would cultivate water power Upanishad, which made their God domain have the attributes of water. Once they urged it, water would murmur around their bodies. Moisture aura flooded the place. Water waves that naked eyes could see wound around their bodies as if they were standing in the middle of a furious current, showing all the advantages of the Sea Clan. Inside the water god domain, those Sea Clan prisoners felt like fish in the sea. Their powers and the god domain had fused perfectly, which had doubled their speed and bursting energy. A fierce flow of energy swarmed over Shuryen like the rolling flood current. In that moment, Shuryen was submerged in the seawater. His powers were hindered by many layers. His body's movements also struggled. It was hard to activate his powers. The god domain of a warrior would bring him tremendous support. Different god domains would affect each other. If these three had cultivated different powers Upanishad, once they joined hands, if they let their god domains overlap, their powers would be reduced. However, these three were from the same Sea Clan, and their power Upanishad was water, which made their god domains attributes unified. Thus, when they activated their god domains, they wouldn't affect but promote each other, expanding the coverage of the combined god domain. Shuryen felt like he had fallen in a muddy puddle while his powers were weakened. Seeing the three prisoners furiously storming forward to attack him, his face became serious. He had underestimated the might of the others and the mysteries of the overlapped god domain. Right when the battle had started, he fell into a disadvantaged situation. Seeing waves rolling torrentially inside the god domain, Shuryen cleared his mind. His eyes changed as all the impure thoughts in his head were washed away. Now his mind was as tranquil as an old well that had no ripples. Touching his forehead, the soul altar suddenly spun. Marvelous flames appeared in his eyes. A scorching aura burst out from his body. Instantly, he was covered in a sea of fire. Flames shot out dazzlingly, twirling around him. This is the flaming power of the sun original essence. He had absorbed a large amount of flaming energy in the solar star exploding fragment field. As soon as his star power Upanishad flickered, the flaming solar energy stored in his chest would be stimulated at once. He also borrowed the power of the vermilion bird true flame and the earth flame. Shortly, he turned into a fire freak with the blazing fire burning on his entire body and spread out to the environment from him. The torrential power of water from the three prisoners' god domain turned into white steam before it could touch Shuryen's body. The soft power of water was dissolved rapidly, turned into mist and vanished. It couldn't gather again. The vermilion bird true flame and the earth flame were ones of the heaven flames. After so many years of refining, their flames had become extremely hot energy. The power they had contributed to Shuryen had doubled his flaming solar energy. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Thick white mist diffused everywhere. Shortly, Shuryen and the three prisoners were hidden in the mist. Their figures disappeared temporarily. Aogu Duo, Leona, and the other feudal vassals couldn't see what was happening in there. All were surprised. Aogu Duo was astounded for a while, then barked with his foul mouth. That Motherf asterisk curs cultivating the fire power Upanishad. No wonder why he dares to face those three prisoners directly. He's lucky indeed. Fire is always the nemesis of water. They have a natural dispute. If Shuryen's fire energy was abundant, he could oppress the god domain of water attribute. Aogu Duo didn't know Shuryen. Thus, when he saw the fire burning on his body, he immediately assumed that Shuryen had cultivated fire power Upanishad. Leona knitted her brows as she was also surprised. She had communicated with Shuryen, so she had a clear understanding of his secrets. Leona mused discreetly. If the mark on his forehead is real, his power Upanishad shouldn't be like this. Did I see it wrong? Karthu and Rochester instinctively thought that Shuryen's main power was fire Upanishad. They got his intentions and appraised him for making a good decision in choosing the opponents. As he had found the Sea Clan men to fight, he had made a good use of the natural nemesis features between the powers Upanishad to subdue the Sea Clan prisoners. Only Delay didn't have such thought. Among this group, he was the only one who had witnessed Shiryen using the soul burial ground. He believed that if the man understood that wicked power Upanishad, he wouldn't consider another power Upanishad his main power to cultivate. He contemplated and reasoned. Afterward, he couldn't help but acclaim Shiryen inwardly. The king of the divine nation in the dark firmament star far away also had a gleam of surprise. He stared at the magical mirror in front of him, then turned to Princess Ziyao. Zaoer, you said that he cultivates the death Upanishad, right? Ziyao nodded to confirm, then smiled deliberately. Father, that man has many secrets. When we were in the solar star exploding fragment field, he used the star power Upanishad to connect with the sun original essence and collected its flaming solar energy. The power he's using now is from his previous accumulation. He doesn't cultivate fire Upanishad. Du Tianji grinned bizarrely. The martial path doesn't have an end. Sometimes, mixing powers isn't always a good method. I hope this boy knew it already. If he's stubborn and cultivating additional powers, he would get nothing in the end. Father, don't worry. I think he knows his goals, said Ziyao smilingly. Du Tianji nodded. He didn't talk more, and they got back to the battle in the mirror. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Thick white mist diffused. The 3C clan prisoners' furious attack ended in a failure. The three prisoners couldn't help but curse. They knew that they weren't lucky this time since Shiryen had cultivated the fire power Upanishad. With the Nemesis feature, their attack was dissolved. They were totally enraged. God Domain was still covering everywhere as they didn't intend to use all of their powers. They exchanged looks, then diverged instantly, moving toward Shiryen in a triangle formation. In the white mist, 3 several hundred-meter rivers were driven by their powers from 10 miles away. The 3 rivers flowed like the Milky Way with billions of tons of seawater showering from the sky. They were like 3 massive whips flogging toward Shiryen. These 3 were careful. Whenever they arrived at an area, they would check if it had lake or rivers or not. In critical times, they could borrow the force of the river and lake to resist the enemies. Thus, within 10 miles from where they appeared, there would be lakes or rivers. 300-meter heaven rivers grumblingly were condensed into 3 crystal white ribbons falling from the sky. Big ancient trees exploded all of a sudden as they couldn't bear the fierce attack of water. The dried trees and leaves also contributed to the mass of the rivers. One of the 3 prisoners was cunning enough to make his river roll the big rocks along. The rocks moving fast in the river was so intimidating. The Milky Ways dashed over from 3 different directions with terrifying energy accumulated in the furious water. The area where Shiryen was standing had to bear a massive force, a formidable pressure, which had almost broken his body. He was still calm. There was no panic sparkling in his eyes. It looked like he was numb as his eyes showed a boundless emptiness. All of a sudden, his hands like 2 sharp claws thrust into the sky and ripped hard. Ripped the sky. The void seemed to be grabbed by invisible formidable claws and torn forcefully. A dazzling slit appeared in the sky. It's the space crack. The sky is torn apart. Space-shooting light emerged from the slit gloriously and dazzlingly. Furious and chaotic lights from outer space gushed out from the space slit. It was so powerful it made souls shiver. A distorted and wildly powerful suction force appeared from the slit. Just like a whale sucking water, that space slit had sucked all the water from the 3 fierce Milky Ways together with all the big trees, rocks, and dirt they carrying. Not a single drop remained. The water power Upanishad that the 3C clan warriors had combined energy to perform, the torrential Milky Way, had been dissolved like that. The 3C clan experts paled as the energy they had poured into the Milky Ways had been swallowed completely. The connection was cut off, so they couldn't retrieve any bit of the amount they had mobilized. King God Realm warriors could release or retreat their energy regularly. To condense 3 Milky Ways, they had used a lot of energy. Although their rolling Milky Way couldn't achieve the desired result, they would still be able to retrieve the energy to prepare for the next attacks. However, they could never imagine that the space crack would appear precisely at this moment and wolf all of their power. Even though they had seen everything, they couldn't retrieve a bit of their energy. In such a short time, half of the energy in their bodies was consumed. Their faces turned ash-gray. The corner of the Purgatory Star. On the mountains surrounding the lake, 5 feudal vassals and Du Tianlu were quiet with gawking eyes. They looked at the scene projected in the mirror disbelievingly. Wahahaha. Suddenly, Leona burst out laughing with her savage appearance. Her laughter almost shook the sky. Aogu Duo gritted his teeth, his face ferocious. He couldn't control his foul mouth, cursing loudly. Chapter 775, Dead Sky. Chapter 775, Dead Sky. Inside the extreme purgatory field, the 3 first Sky of King God realm experts of the Sea clan lost their excited mood. They felt chilled, their faces paled. Shuriyen's power Upanishad was strangely evil beyond their estimation. They didn't react timely. Due to their wrong assumption, they had spent half of the energy accumulated in their bodies to build 3 Milky Ways, which the space slit had swallowed all in just a blink of an eye. The energy they had used was dragged into the space slit. They had not been able to take it back. Their energy had been reduced massively. One side reduces, one side increases. Shuriyen had released his soul burial ground for quite a long time. While they weren't aware of anything, the vitality of the 3 prisoners had been drawn significantly. The Sea Clan warriors had used a large amount of energy while Shuriyen had taken in the light spots of their vitality. His spirit, soul, and chi were filled, as he was brimmed with tremendous energy. Dark Firmament Star, the Grand Palace. Du Tianji's eyes flared up while gluing to the big magical mirror in front of his eyes. He was apparently astounded. Then, he turned to Princess Ziyao next to him. Yaoer, this boy knows how to use space power Upanishad too. Ziyao was a little bit embarrassed. She had just told him Shuriyen had focused on his main power cultivation, and now he suddenly performed space power Upanishad, which abashed her. Father, the powers Upanishad he's cultivating are mixed, indeed. However, Du Tianji waved to stop her. He beamed a faint smile. According to you, he knows what's he doing. I do want to see if he does know what to do. Ziyao gave a forced smile. Du Tianji rubbed his chin. Such a greedy kid. If someone else has the dead power Upanishad, he will never lay his eyes on anything else. The dead power Upanishad alone is rare in the Raging Flames star area. Not many people have the chance to see it before. He isn't satisfied with this power. He still cultivates different powers Upanishad. I don't know what this man wants. His understanding of space power isn't shallow, explained Ziyao. Du Tianji nodded. I can see that. As he's able to tear a space slit at the true God realm, it's proven his understanding of space power isn't just ordinary. However, once he reaches the King God realm, taking more than one at a time isn't good for his cultivation in the future. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. Ziyao felt a headache. Yeah, but this man's quite special. He has many secrets. Father, take your time and watch him. Even I don't have a deep understanding of him. I can't see how many things he's concealing. Interesting, Du Tianji nodded, showing that he got interested. In the extreme purgatory field, Shuriyen retrieved the energy he had burst out above his head. The massive space slit faded away little by little. Looking at the 3 experts of the Sea clan with their pale faces, Shuriyen grinned. He strolled toward one of them. His steps were firm, and everywhere he passed by, big trees and beautiful foliage yellowed then shriveled. Insects hiding deep underground stopped singing. Delay's eyes sparkled. He was shaken inwardly, acclaiming in his head, here it comes. Whenever it was released, only the ones immersed in the soul burial ground dead Upanishad could sense it. People standing outside couldn't detect the soul burial ground on the images projected by the mirror lake. The reason why Delay could find that Shuriyen was using this power Upanishad was from the different conditions of the flowers, trees, and insects. Since he had witnessed this with his own eyes before, he knew the wicked and cruel signs of this power Upanishad. Also, they couldn't see the tiny light spots like raindrops congregating at Shuriyen. However, those onlookers could spot the difference wherever Shuriyen walked by. They were startled, but they didn't know what's happening there. Besides Delay, Leona was the only one among the others who was sensitive enough to recognize it. As soon as she saw that the foliage, flowers, and even the big trees shriveled. Her dark green eyes sparkled. She stopped her wild laughter, pulling herself together to focus on the situation in the field. Aogu Duo, Rochester, Carthu, and Du Tianlu hadn't realized anything. They just saw the three Sea Clan experts slowly had their eyes gloomier as if their chi, spirit, and soul were taken away. The decrease in their fighting will was easy to notice. In the opposite condition to them was Shi Yan's boiling fighting will. His eyes sparkled with exciting light. Just like a hungry beast walked out of the deep forest, he needed meat to fill his empty stomach. Dead sky. Shi Yan sauntered, his face calm and cold. When he was around 1,000 meters away from those three experts, he halted, stooped, and shouted. A deadly, silent, and desperate aura suddenly diffused from him. Brutal, bloodthirsty, resentment, and other negative energy gushed out from his acupuncture points. Flows of energy weaved into an ash-gray mist, congregating atop of him, creating a massive gray curtain. Inside that gray curtain was the thick aura of death, which seemed to be able to cut all kind of vitality. This is one of the supernatural martial techniques he had experimented and created with the Dead Power Upanishad he had comprehended. With the Dead Power Upanishad as the foundation, negative energy was condensed into an attack, creating a massive dead sky curtain in the air, which was grumblingly pressing down. The dead sky curtain covered the three experts of the Sea Clan. They were panicked, their faces gloomy. Inside that gray sky, negative feelings multiplied. In their eyes, it was a world of death. They saw no hope of life. Everywhere was cold and deadly silent. But they could hear countless ghosts crying, calling for them from inside that dead world. Being perplexed, they suddenly had a strange thought that they were part of that dead world, and it absolutely belonged to them no matter what. When this negative mood arose, it meant their fighting will and belief had been smashed. Now they couldn't create a complete thought. Naturally, they could never urge the energy in their body wholly. The confusedness in their eyes became clearer, and the three of them seemed to be completely foolish. They stood still at their spots, just letting the dead sky fall on them. The deadly energy inside the dead sky condensed and created the massive death seal. They grumblingly exploded in the ash-gray clouds and instantly pressed down on the three prisoners. At that perilous moment, they woke up instinctively. They urged the God domain one more time, trying to stimulate the leftover energy in their bodies. With the loud sound of a furious water current, a flow of tenacious water power extended, creating the white waves swarming toward the sky. Burn! Shi Yan didn't change his face. A thought popped up in his soul. The powers of the earth flame, the vermilion bird true flame, and the flaming solar energy in his body fused into one furious and wild flame, flying out from his sleeve. The flaming dragon stormed toward the water waves the other three had created. The fire dragon wound, marching forward. Shriveled, dried plants ignited and burned. Even the rigid rocks were melted into a strange viscous substance. Shortly, the area of several thousand meters in front of Shi Yan had become a fire sea. Flames covered everywhere. The earth flame and the vermilion bird true flame seized the chance and flew out discreetly, releasing their flaming energy into the sea of fire. The god domain that the three prisoners had created with efforts was burned by the furious, rolling flame. Their energy was consumed faster. The Sea Clan was always afraid of fire. It's their nature. That's why they were petrified again. The evil energy of the dead sky had affected their soul consciousness, storming into their soul altar and affecting their god souls. Three poor Sea Clan experts at the first sky of King God realm had made wrong assumptions, which helped Shi Yan's wicked and cruel force break their souls. The dead sky then controlled their mind, making them walk toward the dead sky and the sea of fire. Shi Yan's face was calm. He released his soul consciousness to watch each of their commotions. He didn't dare to be careless. The onlookers were dazed, gazing at the mirror lake. They all wore a bizarre face. Since they weren't inside the dead sky, they didn't know how the evil energy there had affected the souls of the prisoners. In their view, they saw only the three experts of the Sea Clan got stunned, then got crazy as they proactively walked toward the fire sea and let the ash-gray mist cover them. At that moment, The onlookers suddenly realized that the three Sea Clan experts were about to be finished under Shi Yan's strange and wicked powers. They had no hope of overturning the situation. And it was true. The three experts of the Sea Clan walked into the fire sea. Their god bodies couldn't resist the burning force of the earth flame and the vermilion bird true flame. Shortly, they were melted, turning into a puddle of blood, which was then evaporated into a blood-red mist. The strangest thing was they didn't feel pain, just standing dazedly as if their souls had gone away. They weren't aware of their god bodies being melted gradually. People watching the battle from a corner of the Purgatory Star had their eyes sparkling, looking at the warriors in the mirror lake. They suddenly felt a chill sent down their spines. A cold and fearful feeling arose from their hearts. The deaths of the three Sea Clan experts weren't bloody or tragic. But they were so evil and bizarre, which was like watching something virtual and eerie. Who doesn't treasure his life? Who can keep silent being burned? Who will go upon his own initiative to die? The calmer the deaths of the three prisoners of the Sea Clan were, the more frightened the onlookers were when they looked at Shi Yan in the extreme purgatory field. They all felt their scalp numb. This kid is thorny and scary. No one knows what he has done to the enemies and made them willing to die without feeling pain or fright. What kind of power Upanishad is that? Aogu Duo, Rochester, and Karthu put on the dark and gloomy face. A gleam of fear flashed in their eyes. They were discreetly putting up guard, thinking that Shi Yan wasn't an easy opponent. They didn't know which power Upanishad he was cultivating that had such evil and sinister effects. Delay was uncertain. He didn't say a word, knitting his brows tightly. Only Leona had gained back her calmness, as if she had finally verified something. She strangely relaxed, eating the crystal-clear fruits. She looked calm and deliberate, as if her question had been answered. Chapter 776. Pick the tough target to start. Chapter 776. Pick the tough target to start. 3 warriors of the Sea Clan at the King God realm were burned down, leaving only bone dust on the ground. Shi Yan stood in the center of the rolling fire and retrieved his dead power Upanishad with negative energy. He squinted, absorbing the essence chi of the 3 King God realm warriors into his body. He held a look of indifference with no traces of fatigue after a fierce battle. In fact, Shi Yan didn't consume much energy at all. With the earth flame and the vermilion bird flame's assistance, he could simply destroy the opponent's water power Upanishad. His space power Upanishad had swallowed an enormous part of their energy. He expected a smooth victory. Shi Yan didn't have enough time to calm down in his sea of fire. Shortly, he frowned and then snorted. The purgatory token on his waist sent him 8 energy flows of living beings. Apparently, his battle with the 3 Sea Clan experts had alerted the prisoners around here. They silently gathered. At the other corner of the Purgatory Star, the 5 feudal vassals were still sinking in fright. At this moment, they were sensitive to any changes. They were all clearly shaken. Their eyes shifted to the mirror, holding their own gaze. Watahaha. Aogu Duo laughed fiendishly. He didn't say anything, but his face said it all. In Aogu Duo's eyes, Shi Yan had just finished a tough battle killing 3 Sea Clan experts. Therefore, he must have consumed a lot of his energy. At this moment, more and more prisoners were coming to him. One of them had reached the 2nd sky of King God realm. With his experience, Aogu Duo believed that that warrior wouldn't control himself and instead burst out and kill Shi Yan to take the purgatory token, which would help him survive the extreme purgatory field and gain a new life. Karthu and Rochester had the same thought. They frowned, observing. Only Leona stayed calm and cold. She glared at Aogu Duo's group and mockingly snorted. It's over for him. Aogu Duo spread his arms, laughing cheerily. You should prepare to hand me your life star. The corner of Karthu's mouth twitched. He looked at Aogu Duo and then Leona. He didn't say anything, his face strange. Hand you my life star? Aogu Duo, are you blind? Watch it. Leona smiled faintly. Apparently, she wasn't someone who would yield easily. Ziyao has chosen a good guard. If he can pass the challenge in the extreme purgatory field, his attainment in the future is something we can't assess. Du Tianli said with emotions. battling with higher realm when he's at only the third sky of true god realm, and he won easily. I don't think many juniors in our divine nation can achieve such a feat. Rochester nodded. This kid does have some tricks. No wonder why Ziyao gave him the quota, which should be Ao Gara's. Yeah, I think that little girl's correct again. Her vision is getting sharper indeed. Damn it. Ao Gu Duo looked at him indignantly, shouting. My nephew Ao Gara didn't want to compete with him. He knew he would receive a quota from me. That's why he gave the other his. Harumph, I want to see if he can survive or not. Then you should watch carefully. Rochester lifted his head, looking at him without fear. I don't know why I suddenly believe that that boy will get out of the extreme purgatory field alive. Rochester, you mean my nephew would die? Ao Gu Duo spat out coldly with a ferocious look on his face. Nodded, Rochester grinned. True. If Shuryen could break through the King God realm shortly, I believe he can survive. Your nephew? Perhaps he will die. Ha ha. Ao Gu Duo grimaced. He harumphed indignantly, his eyes giving off a savage gaze as if his wild nature had been aroused. Anyway, since Carthu and Rochester were feudal vassals like him, of course they wouldn't be afraid of him. Sometimes they would mock him, which enraged him badly. He gazed at the mirror lake. If his look could cross that lake, with his cultivation base, perhaps he could use his look to pierce Shuryen to death. Too bad. Du Tianji had hired specialists to create this lake. It hid a great mystery that he couldn't use his soul to get through it. Dark firmament star. Not bad. King Du Tianji of the divine nation nodded and rubbed his chin. Not bad at all, he continued. Ziyao was happy. I told you, father. This man is so mysterious. It's not easy to make him lose. You little girl. Your eyes had always been sharp. I am proud of you. DJ looked at her deeply. After a while, he sighed. Unfortunately, you're not a man. Otherwise, I wouldn't have such a headache. Ziyao's face darkened as sorrow pierced her heart. She just sighed and said nothing. Inside the furious fire, the temperature was getting higher and higher. The ancient trees around had contributed to this mighty fire. The burning fire got beautifully fiercer. In the fire sea, Shuryen was calm, standing upright like a spear, watching here and there. Deep inside the dark forest, 8 prisoners were hiding. One of them was at the second sky of King God Realm. His life magnetic field was obviously stronger than the others. Shuryen spotted them via his purgatory token. Shuryen didn't dare to act rashly. There were 7 first sky of King God Realm warriors and 1 second sky of King God Realm warrior. Even if he was more arrogant, he wouldn't dare say that he could defeat this force, especially since he had just finished a battle. Absorbing the essence chi of the Sea Clan experts would take time to filter. If he engaged in another battle at this moment, it would be too unfavorable to him. Shuryen didn't dare show a trace of fatigue. He knew that when those hungry wolves saw that he was tired, they would swarm over wildly and slash him, grinding him to take his purgatory token. At this moment, he became calmer, pondering in the sea of fire. Abruptly, he faced the sky and laughed crazily. In the ear-piercing whistle, he took action first. Clusters of flaming energy balled next to him. Just like the burning meteors from the sky, they started to precisely bombard those hiding warriors. Rumble, rumble, rumble. With the fireballs falling, those who were hiding urged their god domain to retreat or to use their powers to resist. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The fierce whistle that could prickle people's eardrums exploded inside the field. Although nobody could detect the source of the hissing, they all felt an extremely sharp force. 3 bone thorns darted so fast that no one could actually see them move. With space power, they glided and disappeared, leaving only the terrifying whistle. The god domain of one of the hiding people was pierced instantly. A bone thorn appeared, flying towards his neck. Boom! A low, rumbling sound echoed from that man's direction. In just a blink, that man showed himself. He was an expert of the Dark Spirit clan, the one who had the highest realm among the prisoners hiding here. Second sky of King God Realm. Boom, boom. 2 other bone thorns appeared from the shadows, furiously stabbing. The Dark Spirit Clan's expert put on a grim face while both of his hands were making hand seals and different techniques in the air. Light sparkled gloriously. Just like the blooming firework, the bone thorns and his hand seals brought more light which flashed dazzlingly, hurting people's eyes. His hand seals and techniques turned into special symbols of the Dark Spirit Clan. Just like living creatures, they stopped the furious bone thorns. However, he had to retreat. Massive fireballs flew towards 7 other warriors. They quietly retreated, not daring to stay and sneak into this battle. The second sky of King God Realm Dark Spirit Clan expert had to make the hand seals continuously while the 3 bone thorns were chasing after him like the spooky ghosts. No matter how hard he wiggled, he couldn't get rid of them. After one futile attempt, they would disappear. Immediately, they would reappear from a cunning angle, which made the others struggle hard to dodge and resist. Shortly, that man glared at Shuryen from a far distance, snorted, then ran away. When the other 7 saw the second sky of King God Realm running away, they didn't stop to think and immediately ran for their lives. In just a blink, no one was hiding near Shuryen. At this moment, sweat started to bead on his forehead. His tense nerves relaxed. He hastened to use pellets to adjust his conditions. The man at the second sky of King God Realm was truly strong. Shuryen had used the bone thorns with space power, but he couldn't pierce through his god domain shortly to attack his god body. Shuryen had tried his best to apply the knowledge of space power to his attack. He had even added star energy into the bone thorns. However, it was only enough to make his opponents afraid of him, not sufficient to deal any damage. The reason why the expert retreated was because he couldn't estimate Shuryen's real competence. He was afraid that once he fought with him, both would receive damage, which was the best chance for the other 7 prisoners to attack them. In the end, he couldn't get the purgatory token, and he could have been wounded badly or even gotten killed. Shuryen understood that if there weren't so many people hiding and waiting for a chance around them, that Dark Spirit Clan's expert probably would not have given up his scheme. He would do everything he can to kill Shuryen. The main reason why the other had left, besides Shuryen's Beyond Realm performance, was that he was afraid of stealthy operations of the others. Thus, he had to leave for now. Choosing the strongest to attack had given the best intimidation effect. It happened all according to Shuryen's plan. Although he had to use a lot of his energy, no one dared to stay near him now. He had assumed correctly. He found the way to deal with them. If he had chosen a first sky of King God Realm warrior to attack, the result wouldn't have been as desired. He wouldn't have created the scaring effect. Instead, he would have created the chance for that second sky of King God Realm warrior to kill him with one strike. In the end, he would have died pitifully here. Watch out. Cover 10 miles around. Tell me immediately when any creature approaches. His soul consciousness sensed a while in the purgatory token. He ordered the heaven flames resolutely. When all the heaven flames flew out of the fire sea, he left the place immediately, crazily flying toward the more perilous and isolated area. Shortly, his image disappeared in the view of Leona and the other. His figure wasn't projected in the mirror lake anymore. Very clever. He has many fighting experiences, too. Being calm at a critical moment like that, he's truly a character. The master of the divine nation suddenly laughed in the dark firmament star far from them. He nodded, indeed, he's not bad. Not worse than Aogera. I'm anticipating that he and Aogera could have a battle. I think it would be more interesting. Xiao's face was gloomy. A gleam of begrudging sorrow sparkled in her eyes. Aogera and Shuryen were her subordinates. No matter who won or lost, she would suffer from grief. Chapter 777, Getting Stronger. Chapter 777, Getting Stronger. Shuryen didn't know that both Leona and Aogu Duo had placed a big bet on him or the fact that the master of the divine nation in the dark firmament star was watching him. In the extreme purgatory field, after killing 3 first sky of King God Realm Sea clan warriors, he immediately ran 1,000 miles away and found a cave in a quiet mountain to absorb the essence chi of the 3 King God Realm warriors. Since he had reached the peak of true God realm, his acupuncture points had expanded and were able to store more energy. In addition, he found himself unable to fall into bedevilment easily. The negative moods couldn't drag him into insanity anymore, and he could focus with greater clarity. This change had arisen earlier. When he was in the Sea of Meteorites, he had always concentrated on exploiting ores which cleared his mind and purified his god soul. He found that when he focused on achieving a certain task and keeping his mind clear, he wouldn't fall into bedevilment easily. When he killed that expert of the Dark Clan, the soul-gathering pearl, the mark on his forehead, and the inner world 5 devils had fused together, creating a section in the soul altar. When that section in his soul altar was built, his soul and mind became tougher and more relaxed. He thought that the reason why he wouldn't fall into bedevilment easily was related to the establishment of his soul altar. Shuryen sat cross-legged in the dim cave, staying in the slits between the big rocks in the case. He closed his eyes to more clearly feel the changes in his body. The mysterious, refined energy didn't move this time to his essence chi ancient tree since it was brimmed now. Unless he could break through to the king god realm, which would expand his essence chi ancient tree several times, he wouldn't receive any benefit from this mysterious energy anymore. The mysterious energy diverged into 2 pathways into his body. One flooded his muscles, blood, and bones, increasing their strength and refining them one more time. The energy going through the other path was converted into his immortal demon blood. Half of the essence chi of the 3 first sky of King God Realm warriors were turned into immortal demon blood. There were about 20-some drops of immortal demon blood. He stored them in a place in his body. He could use these to fight back his enemies in an emergency. Shuryen had tried the bursting power of the immortal demon blood in Karthu's gravitational room. Shuryen decided that he must collect the immortal demon blood by hunting experts in the extreme purgatory field as he expected to carry out his plan to change his blood. At the moment, he had more than 70 drops of immortal demon blood stored in his body. Although it was still far from the quantity he needed, he felt hopeful. Every time he adjusted his breath and conditions to refine his body, he calmed down and sensed his 3 powers Upanishad: space, star, and death and life. Every time he engaged in battle, he would use these 3 powers to utilize supernatural martial techniques depending on the circumstance. Gradually, his understanding of the 3 powers Upanishad deepened. It was quite different from the warriors. When Shuryen broke through the true God realm, he had the 3 powers Upanishad create a tier of his soul altar. Perhaps this was why he was unable to decide which would be his main power and which would be his supportive power. In his point of view, all 3 powers Upanishad were all profound. None of them were weak. To him, they all provided tremendous support. The fight with 3 warriors of the Sea Clan made him realize the extent of assistance that all the 3 powers had given him. If he hadn't had space power, he would have never dissolved their formidable attacks and defeat them. Without the dead Upanishad, their souls wouldn't have been affected, which led them to an unknowing death. His resolute victory also related to other powers Upanishad that he had been cultivating. Using the correct of the 3 powers Upanishad precisely during a battle was the key to winning battles. To him, the 3 powers Upanishad were all his main powers. He didn't want to give up any of them. He strongly believed that his 3 powers Upanishad could thrive together. In the future, they could boost his fighting competence to its maximum potential. While quietly looking further ahead and retrieving the soul consciousness, Shuryen felt changes in his body. He sent his soul into the soul altar and slowly understood. After a while, he grinned. Touching the purgatory token, he flew out of the cave. A flow of soul consciousness was poured into the purgatory token. Signs of energy of living beings within 10 miles around would be shown in the token, which Shuryen could check easily. Shuryen crossed through the vast forest aimlessly. He wanted to seek for a possible battle. A flow of feeble energy sent out from the purgatory token. Shuryen concentrated and sensed it. He grinned fiendishly and accelerated towards a lake. After 1 hour, the battle ended. A first sky of King God Realm prisoner floated in the lake. His life was cut off. He squinted, standing quietly by the lake. After a while, he departed. He became a hunter. Prisoners in the adjacent areas became his prey. Of course, the roles were all relative. Some prisoners would initially consider Shuryen delicious prey. He was still at the true god realm. Prisoners who detected him all thought that he was a soft persimmon that they could squeeze easily. From his death, they would earn the purgatory token. Most of the time, whenever he showed up, his target would laugh crazily, leaving him no time to talk. They would attack him first. Upon entering the extreme purgatory field, he found only villains. And the participants' realms were also high. The third sky of True God Realm was the entry level. There was no target better than such a contestant at the True God Realm. Thus, whenever a prisoner found him, they immediately became excited. However, those prisoners would quickly find that Shuryen was actually the chewiest bone among the contestants in this extreme purgatory field. Through the purgatory token, Shuryen found his prey unceasingly. Once locating the one to attack, he would immediately entangle his prey and kill him. Afterward, he would take the dead man's essence chi to restore his energy, refine his bones and body, and condense the immortal demon blood. Time flies quickly. 3 months had passed just like a blink of an eye. Shuryen didn't remember how many battles he had engaged and how many people he had killed. His fighting will remained full and his energy had always been at the peak of his realm. Through battling during this period, the number of immortal demon blood in his body had reached a frightening figure of 300. This was a record he had never reached before. 300 drops of immortal demon blood could replace his blood in both of his arms. He had tried it. Once he replaced the blood in his arms with the immortal demon blood, his arms felt like they had endless energy. He felt like he could tear the god body of a king god realm like he could rip off a sheet of paper. The immortal demon blood hid some kind of evil, torrential energy that could fuse perfectly with his power. However, Shuryen had never tried this kind of energy during his battles. However, he believed that when he was backed into a corner, he would stimulate all the energy of the immortal demon blood to overturn whatever situation. He could become the winner from what would seem like a clear loss. After 3 months of fighting, he had used his opponents to perceive the essence of his 3 powers Upanishad. The extreme purgatory field was an incomparably magical place. In this area, his perception and sensibility toward the powers became very sensitive. In each fight, he had used the 3 powers Upanishad to kill his enemies. Afterward, he would obtain a new level of comprehension of the 3 powers Upanishad. After each battle, when he was refining the immortal demon blood, he would summarize his mistakes he made during the battle and learn new skills in using the power. Gradually, his understanding and perception of the 3 powers Upanishad became profound. Today, he had hunted down 5 first sky of King God Realm warriors. Seeing the pieces of bodies he had shattered lying in the blood puddles around the place, his face was cold, eyes shining like diamonds. His body slightly shivered as he tried to calm his mind to learn the essence of using his power Upanishad in the previous fight. His soul reached back to the past to learn something from his fight. A blinding light flashed gloriously in his soul altar. He was baffled. His eyes sparkled with a strange light. Starlight twirled around his body. Death and life, the 2 different attributes, scattered uncontrollably around him. Fine space slits sizzled and appeared spontaneously in the void near him. Space seemed to be in an uncontrollable chaos. He was standing indifferently while his soul consciousness floated and entered some mysterious domain. After a while, he made a passionate expression as if he saw something wonderful. He quickly stormed out of his place, flashing like a beam of light to find a place for his ascetical training. He now had a good grasp of those mysteries. He just needed a way to continue studying. As long as he could harvest something, the threshold of the new realm, which had troubled him for a long time, would be wide open. Once he reached the King God realm, he believed that the realm of his prey in the extreme purgatory field would be upgraded from the first sky of King God realm to the second and third sky of King God realm. When that happened, his immortal demon blood could be condensed faster. Shortly, he disappeared. In a corner of Purgatory Star, the 5 feudal vassals were sitting on their mountains together with Du Tianlu and watching the scenes in the lake. The Mirror Lake had been divided into some smaller sections in which one of the villains was showing off his talents. The lake would clearly project the battles. That's why Leona, Aogu Duo, and the others could watch most of the battles happening in the extreme purgatory field. In every battle, the 3 young people of Leona's team and 3 members of Aogera's team were like sharp weapons that could pierce through anything. Wherever they passed, most of the prisoners would be torn into pieces. Only the 3rd Sky of King God Realm warriors would proactively stay away from these pointy weapons to save their lives. Besides those 2 forces, Yalin and Tai Mu under Carthu's command, and the other 2 warriors under Rochester's didn't meet many troubles. However, they had fewer achievements compared to Leona and Aogera's team. They could kill only a small number of prisoners. Shiryen was alone, so he could be considered a force himself. His achievement was relatively normal. Chapter 778. True Colors. Chapter 778. True Colors. In 3 months, Shiryen had killed many people. His achievement wasn't a small number, but it was still much smaller compared to the other 5 forces. The warriors he had killed were all at the 1st Sky of King God Realm. He hadn't killed any 2nd Sky of King God Realm warriors. Moreover, after each battle, he would disappear for several days, a different habit compared to the other 5 forces. The other forces would continue their slaughter as if they had never been exhausted. The achievement contestants could complete in the extreme purgatory field did not only depend on the number they killed, but also the realms of the ones they killed. According to Du Tianji's rule, killing a 2nd Sky of King God Realm expert was equal to killing 10 1st Sky of King God Realm warriors. Leona's team and Aogera's team had killed several 2nd Sky of King God Realm experts. Their number wasn't something Shiryen could compete with at the moment. Since his real realm was still the true God realm, he was limited. For the time being, he didn't dare battle the warriors at the 2nd Sky of King God Realm. Only after he had entered the King God Realm could he skip the level and battle with the others. When that time came, he would be confident that he wouldn't get himself killed. In his current condition, maybe he could kill a 2nd Sky of King God Realm warrior, but it wouldn't be easy. He would get hurt and possibly suffer from severe wounds. The extreme purgatory field hid dangers at every place and at all times. There wasn't a single peaceful moment in this place. When the warriors battled against each other, they would generate tremendous energy fluctuation that would attract the other prisoners. When someone sees you tired or wounded, he will not talk about rules. He will kill you instantly. Since Shiryen had a precise assumption to the situation, he hadn't dared to provoke the 2nd Sky of King God Realm warriors. It wasn't that he was afraid of defeat. He was afraid of bad wounds which would make him the prey of prisoners hiding elsewhere. Shiryen had his own rules. Perhaps it was because of his cautiousness that he was able to survive until this moment, continue getting stronger and accumulate energy, and wait for a chance to break through. Today, after 3 months of collecting immortal demon blood and being patient, his chance has finally arrived. A corner of the Purgatory Star. Leona, Aogu Duo, and the others were still watching their teams fight in different areas. Their faces were cold and indifferent. However, they didn't quarrel or mock each other anymore. The result of this competition became gradually clear. If nothing unexpected happens, Leona's team and Aogera's team will become the forces that have killed the most and claim victory. Yalin, Tai Mu, Rochester's team, and De Ming's team hadn't faced any difficult situations yet. However, from the current scores, it would be difficult for them to win. In their eyes, after 3 months, the winners would be Leona's and Aogera's teams. And what made people wait was the big bet between Leona and Aogu Duo. They were waiting in silence for the encounter between Shiryen and Aogera in the extreme purgatory field. However, the extreme purgatory field was really vast, approximately half of the Purgatory Star. The chance for them to meet each other on the field was very slim, unless they proactively searched for each other. This was how Aogera searched for Shiryen. Before he killed someone, he would ask about Shiryen's whereabouts. He wanted to locate Shiryen quickly to start his bloody slaughter. He remembered Aogu Duo's words. His resentment towards Shiryen had enraged him daily. However, the prisoners who had met Shiryan were all killed. Aogera couldn't find any news of Shiryan's location. He was quite irritated. Today, Aogera's chance came as he met the Dark Spirit Clan's second sky of King God Realm Warrior who had encountered Shiryan. As they were at the same realm, being the god's favored one, Aogera was stronger than him. Moreover, Aogera wasn't alone. That man's fate was determined. He was defeated and wounded badly. His body and soul were detained. At this moment, Aogera didn't hasten to finish him. He asked with a cold stare, "Do you know anything about a true God Realm contestant? He's one of us, one of the two weakest. But he doesn't know how to summon the beasts. Tell me what you know and I will let you die intact." The Dark Spirit Clan warrior had both his soul and energy restrained. He had heard about Aogera and his brutal methods before. Thus, he hesitated a bit then spat out, "I know his general location." Aogera's eyes brightened. He was surprised. "You just need to tell me the estimated location. I can let you die without pain. I'll keep your god body intact. I met him 3 months ago. Then, I hid for a while. I know where he is." The man pondered for a few seconds. He knew that he couldn't avoid Aogera's slaughter. If the other dragged his soul out and searched his soul using special techniques, his secret would be revealed. Thus, he shared what he knew about Shiryan's whereabouts honestly. Boom! The man's body was ripped off by countless beams of gold light. Blood splashed like a rain shower. The thick smell of blood permeated the area. Aogera didn't let the man die intact. He stooped and smiled evilly as if he had released out his anger. Gold lightning strikes shot out from his god domain, grinding that man's flesh body. "Finally, I found you." Aogera stooped, his eyes sinister with an evil intent. He suddenly said, "Change the direction. It is time to take that brat life." The other two warriors under Aogu duo understood his personality, so they were not surprised by his emotions. They nodded, telling him that they understood. This team of 3 followed in the direction the man had told them, moving fast. Dark Firmament Star. This man is brutal. He has no humanity. He doesn't talk rules. He even lied to the man who died. Well then, I like him. The master of the divine nation Du Tianji laughed slightly while watching Aogera's operation. A confused look sparkled in Ziyao's beautiful eyes. Her bold brows knitted together, her face unnatural. Until now, Aogera was always nice and gentle in front of her, giving her a feeling similar to a mild spring breeze. She had never seen this other face of Aogera. In this place today, she had finally witnessed Aogera's brutal deeds. She understood that the Aogera in front of her was one person. Behind her back, he was a completely different person. The lake in her heart rippled as a small rock was thrown into it. She pondered. That man had never hid his true self. From the beginning until now, he always acted cold and harsh. Compared to Aogera, he seemed to be easier to approach. She contemplated quietly. She was a little absent-minded. Aogera's deed had chilled her heart. The master of the divine nation showed a faint smile as he was not bothered by Aogera. He laughed louder. "Zaoer, don't you feel lost? In our divine nation, Aogera is infamous indeed. After he's become your retinue, he's tried to control himself. You have never seen him in this manner, I guess?" Ziyao nodded bitterly. "When he was with me, he was always nice and gentle. He treated people well and friendly. I let him handle my glorious amethyst star. My people liked and respected him. They said that he was like a tender sunshine." Du Tianji was surprised. "My silly little girl. It is because he is chasing you. That's why he had to show you his best face. Didn't you know his reputation before you met him? Did you just ignore it?" Ziyao pondered for a while. Then she said begrudgingly, "Perhaps when he was with me, he was too nice and gentle. It made me not believe in the rumors." Then, a new thought startled her. "That asshole didn't change his manner in front of me. He never wanted to show off his perfect features. He often told me cold words that made me hate him. Is it true that he doesn't think about me? That's why he doesn't mind what I think about him." After thinking for a while, she felt lost somehow. She felt a little bit angry. It's normal. When your father chased your mother, I was always gentle and tender. I didn't show her my evil face. I tried to protect her because I cared. Although Aogera's infamous, he is honest to you. He has to eat the bitter fruits. I'm sure about this. Du Tianji smiled. And about that boy, I think he doesn't have any bad will towards you. That's why he shows his true colors to you. It is good, anyway. If you wanted to use him and he always hid his honest thoughts, it would not be good for you. I don't like people pretending in front of me. Too fake. I'm willing to let Aogera show his true colors to me. I don't want him to wear a mask when he's with me. Xiao suddenly lifted up her head, looking behind the master of the divine nation. I think staying with someone like Shi Yan is much easier. Du Tianji stayed silent as if he was recalling something, his eyes showing mixed emotions. After a while, he muttered, "Perhaps I was wrong that year. Your mother got angry with me when she found out that I was so brutal. Perhaps I shouldn't disguise myself." She wouldn't have questions in her mind. Xiao's beautiful eyes flashed. "Father, how did my mother die?" Du Tianji grimaced. He snorted and didn't talk more. Since Xiao was anxious, she asked nothing else. However, her curiosity wouldn't die that easily. Long afterwards, Du Tianji opened his mouth again. "Xiaoer, if you could choose between Aogera and Shi Yan, who would you choose?" Aogu Duo stands behind Aogera. Although that boy's cultivating the dead Upanishad, he seems to have nothing related to that person. From what I've observed, his potential is not as strong as Aogera. He can't assist you well. If you could choose one of them to be the survivor, who would you want? Xiao was surprised and she panicked. After a long time, she stooped and whined, "I don't know. In fact, you don't need to choose. Only one of them will survive. They will help you choose themselves." Du Tianji smiled faintly and his face relaxed. Xiao didn't know what her father was thinking. Chapter 779. A Frightening Change. Chapter 779. A Frightening Change. Some lake in Purgatory Star. Du Tianli stooped to watch the lake, holding the blood crown in his hand. All of a sudden, he made a stern expression and felt surprised. He couldn't help but cry, "Ah!" Leona could feel something too. Her line of sight fell on an area in the lake. An uncontrollable joy crossed her dark, green eyes. What's happening? Earth and heaven energy in that area is changing. From this situation, perhaps someone is breaking into the new realm? Du Tianlu was startled. Then, he recalled something. Shi Yan is in that area. Everybody was shaken. Rochester, Carthew, and Delay were surprised. Strange light shot out from their eyes as they shifted their looks to that area. Aogu Duo grimaced and couldn't hide his snort. He seemed to be very irritated. In the mirror lake, massive energy was gathering inside a cave of a hill. That kind of energy looked like immense, gray clouds. The energy seemed to be tied by an invisible entity that kept pulling them, gathering them together. Strange beams of light shot out from that cluster as if they were refining energy. At the beginning, the mass of that gray energy was as big as a room. Gradually, the energy in its core had pulled and gathered more earth and heaven energy. Shortly, the mass of energy clustered at that area had covered 10 mu of land. Peculiar energy fluctuations appeared in that area. From time to time, they could see light shoot out from a small slit in the space. From their perspective, they could only see energy continually gathering. They could see neither what was happening inside the cave nor what Shi Yan was doing. However, they knew that only one contestant knew how to use space power and make space crack. That person was Shi Yan. So although they couldn't see his figure, they were sure he was the one who was creating such a tremendous commotion. Earth and heaven energy condensed and refined unceasingly, creating the miraculous power that could change the body. This was the most evident sign that happened when a true God Realm warrior was breaking through to the King God Realm. Apparently, at this moment, Shi Yan was immersing in his breakthrough. It's been just 3 months, a short period, and he can make it to this step. Not bad. In fact, he's good. Carthew was sinking in thought. He was astounded for a while before talking, instinctively looking at Leona. Leona wasn't shaken. She was calm, and hope could be seen through her eyes. If this boy can get out alive, his future potential is immeasurable. Delay suddenly spoke up after many days of keeping silent. His eyes raked through people, then said seriously, "I met him 3 years ago. At that time, he had only the second sky of True God Realm cultivation base. He would never mistake it. The battle that took place 3 years ago had left a deep impression on his mind that he would never forget. He would never forget that Shiryan, at his second sky of True God Realm, had subdued his son De Meng 3 years ago. Through that battle, he could see a shadow behind Shiryan. The shadow that had disappeared for so many years, but he still respected it out of fear. That's also why he didn't dare kill Shiryan even though he felt so ashamed. He didn't dare attack him himself, but he had planned some stealthy plans. He was afraid of the shadow behind Shiryan. He was afraid that if he made a wrong assumption, disaster would fall on him and his family. That man was an undying legend of the Raging Flame Star area. Whoever had known about his legend would never dare face him. Delay's cold explanation had attracted many people. Aogu Duo couldn't stay calm. He shot up from his seat, trying to hide the fright on his face. "Delay, are you sure? That kid had only the second sky of True God Realm cultivation base 3 years ago." Rochester expressed his admiration. "Ziyao's good fortune is here. Finally, I know why she wanted to give Aogara's quota to Shiryan. I got it now. That little girl isn't bad." Karthu was shaken. His eyes brightened as he took a deep breath. 3 years. He needed just 3 years to enter the third sky of True God Realm from the second sky of True God Realm. If he had accumulated for many years, it wouldn't have been a big surprise. However, his third sky of True God Realm has just been established after 3 years. And now he was able to walk through the door leading to the King God Realm. 3 years. He has used only 3 years. He's a monster. Such a monster. Karthu's eyes brightened. In their eyes, when Shiryan was still at the second sky of True God Realm, he could have a lot of time accumulating energy and perceiving his realm. Breaking through the third sky of True God Realm in 3 years wasn't something too special to achieve. They thought that Shiryan must have had a long time cultivating before that. But this was different. The time he took to enter the King God Realm from the third sky of True God Realm had taken him less than 3 years. How can someone comprehend that? The 5 great feudal vassals and Du Tianlu were startled. They all fell into silence. I think after a warrior reached the third sky of True God Realm, even if he uses magical pellets and medicine every day, he can't fill the essence Qi ancient tree within 3 years, let alone spend countless days comprehending his powers Upanishad. 3 years is just a flash in our life, a small ripple in the long river of life. It isn't worth mentioning. But Rochester shook his head, forcing a smile. I had spent almost 100 years to find a chance to leap up from the third sky of True God Realm. This is considered fast already. Many have spent several hundred years to reach the King God Realm. Everybody stayed silent. Even foul-mouthed Aogu Duo had zipped his mouth with a gloomy and uncertain face. No one knew what he was thinking. If he can maintain this cultivating speed, Leona's gloomy voice arose before pausing from looking at the grimaced Aogu Duo, his boasting words can become true. Within 100 years, he can take the head on your neck, Aogu Duo. These are no longer the words of a madman. Everybody else recalled this event. They shifted their strange looks toward Aogu Duo. Under their scrutinizing looks, Aogu Duo darkened his face and said nothing. He grimaced more, his sturdy body trembling. Apparently, the other had poked his wound. I think she had just bragged. I never thought that I had underestimated him. Karthu suddenly laughed. He picked up the strong liquor from the maid standing next to him, gulped, then laughed louder. I've drunk and chatted with him. Perhaps I can brag about this later. Haha. Interesting. Maybe I can witness a miracle. A new star is rising in the sky of the divine nation with its glorious light. Seems I will have to flatter him when he gets out of there. Haha. Rochester added with an odd look. Aogu Duo looked like he was about to shoot fire from his eyes. He was shivering indignantly. His face had darkened to the acme. Don't get too excited. Breaking in the extreme purgatory field isn't always a good thing. Did you forget where he is? Du Tianlu suddenly spoke up, frowning deeply. How many could have a decent end breaking to a new realm in this extreme purgatory field? Hearing him, the shaken Aogu duo laughed sinisterly. Oh yeah. No matter how endless his potential is, risking his life to break through the new realm in the extreme purgatory field is no different from finding a way to death. Haha. Leona remembered the special features of the extreme purgatory field. She couldn't hide her pale face as she felt a little anxious. What happened was not different from what they anticipated. After Du Tianlu finished, new changes happened in Shurian's area. Within 100 miles around, many prisoners were hiding. From the peculiar change of earth and heaven energy, they knew what was happening. Someone was about to break through in the extreme purgatory field. This realization stirred up the prisoners. They didn't hesitate. All started to move toward Shurian's location. Any warrior breaking through to the new realm shouldn't be disturbed, especially when they were about to break through a big realm. This breakthrough needed to be carried out discreetly. They even needed strong warriors to guard them. Once they got attacked, it wasn't uncommon if they got killed. It was different from the time Shurian broke through to the true God realm. To reach the King God realm, he needed to gather earth and heaven energy, which couldn't be done quickly. At this moment, he couldn't be distracted, so he couldn't urge his power to resist the enemies. He needed to focus wholeheartedly to break through. If he got a lot of enemies waiting for this moment, he would be surrounded and have no means to withstand. Every one of the prisoners knew that it was convenient for them to attack him at this moment. Thus, all of them started to flood this place. Soon, savage villains appeared one by one in front of Shurian's cave. There were around 10 with several second sky of King God realm warriors. Haha, everyone has their own fate. He doesn't know the dangerous features of the extreme purgatory field, and he dares take such risks. Haha. Aogu duo calmed down as the big rock hanging in his heart seemed to disappear. He could smile now. Rochester, Carthu, and Du Tianlu were solemn. They all frowned and sighed inwardly. They thought that Shurian was acting rashly. He wasn't careful as he had made so many ferocious villains surround him. Even Leona was restlessly agitated. She scolded him in her mind, thinking that Shurian was too arrogant. He understood the perilous characteristics of the extreme purgatory field, but he dared to break through in this evil place. Her worries weren't only because of a life star but something else. Shurian's life was related to one of her secrets and even her future. She shouldn't be tense, but she didn't want to stand and stare at the prisoners taking Shurian's life while he was in the middle of his breakthrough. Tenmu is about 66,700 square meters. Chapter 780. The King's Heart. Chapter 780. The King's Heart. The Grand Palace of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. Du Tianji rubbed his chin, smiling in a relaxed manner. That kid doesn't value his life. Ziyao's bold brows knitted tightly. She clenched her teeth and mumbled, I don't know what he's thinking. He knows how dangerous the extreme purgatory field is, but he still decided to act rashly. Aogu duo, Rochester, and Leona had the same concerns. More than 10 hungry wolf prisoners gathered outside the cave where Shurian was cultivating. They all gazed at the cave. There were no good guys in this pack. They were all the felons of the divine nation. Their thirst for blood was their basic instinct. To confine them, the 5 great feudal vassals had put a lot of effort. Many of them were infamous in the Raging Flame Star area for their bloody hands. Many warriors would shake like a leaf seeing them outside. Today, they were gathering here for a sole purpose. The Purgatory Token. Purgatory Star, the biggest prison of the Empire, only imprisoned the death-sentenced inmates. Once they were kept in the Purgatory Star, no one even dreamed about breaking out. Hotshots guarded this place year-round, and the prison also had intimidating restrictions and barriers. If they took risks and broke out, death would be their only consequence. The reason why they were kept alive was because the Empire needed them. It needed them to die in a valuable way. The extreme purgatory field was their stage, their blood and fire fate. With their forsaken destiny, they had only one way to live, which was through the Purgatory Token. Taking the Purgatory Token was the only way for them to get out of the Purgatory Star. No matter how serious their crimes were, the Empire would clear them all. A Purgatory Token meant life, a dawn of hope. At this moment, that dawn was in front of them. It was also easy to reach. What prisoner wouldn't be excited? Seems like we can't wait for he and Aogera to engage in battle. Warriors have to concentrate wholeheartedly while breaking through. He won't be an exception. Du Tianji smiled faintly. What a pity, his potential wasn't bad. He was just too rash. Ziyao gritted her teeth. She was worried and felt chills. She didn't know why she didn't want to see Shuryen experiencing bad situations. This thought was much stronger than her worry for Aogera's life. Upon seeing the villains gathering more and more, looking like they were about to take action, some images flashed in her mind. Demeng fought with Shuryen, which frightened Delay, to save her imperial dignity. She and Shuryen ran away in the amethyst war chariot through the solar star exploding fragment field. She remembered the moment he controlled the flaming meteorites bombarding the others wildly in this strange forbidden place. The time they spent together in the barren and isolated land. Each of his jokes, his actions. Those images played in her head and she couldn't wash them away. A wisp of bitterness rippled in the lake of her heart, expanding to her whole body. While she didn't realize that, her beautiful eyes sparkled, expressing worry and tension which had never happened before. It's been so many years, and she had never met a man who could make her yearn for him, worried about him like that. She was worried that he would be killed. Aogera had stood behind her for so many years, but she had never felt the same way towards him. Suddenly, Ziyao knew that the man who came from an unknown continent had rooted deep in her heart, occupying an important position she could never dismiss. You're confused, Du Tianji frowned, talking coldly and heartlessly. People who plan for big schemes won't notice the minor details. They won't let anything distract their minds. No matter who he is just a sword in your hand, the support you need to move forward. You have to remember that the sword in your hand is just a tool, and you should never let the sword stab yourself. Ziyao was shaken. She woke up from her thought, shaking her head miserably. She said nothing. Without a callous heart, how could you survive the cruel and harsh competition? If you're not cold and calm enough, you will harm not only yourself but also your people. Du Tianji snorted. Girl, you can't compete with your brother Du Jia in these manners. You're soft-hearted. How will you succeed? To get the throne, Du Jia attacked me and my brother. Is this the necessary quality to be a king? Ziyao's beautiful eyes shone with anger. Father, were you just like my brother that year? I was more heartless than him. Du Tianji parted his lips with a cold and sinister face. You and Du Jia aren't blood siblings. You have different mothers. It is normal for him to attack you guys. That year, no need to mention my siblings born from other mothers. I even killed my own brothers. My own brothers who stood in my way, I killed them. Ziyao's face lost color in fright. If I could get back to that time, I would still do the same. For the apex of the martial path, for the prosperity of the divine nation, there is no man that I wouldn't kill. Du Tianji snorted, his face heartless and resolute. Dash. Extreme purgatory field. Inside the cave, strange energy was rippling. Earth and heaven energy gathered thickly on an area more than 10 mu. Sparks were sent into the sky with lots of energy. Flows of earth and heaven energy became pure, oozing out from the energy area. They streamed out and then were pulled into the cave by some unknown force. In the adjacent areas by the river, in the forest, or even underground, the prisoners couldn't wait any longer. They showed up one by one, gazing at the cave like a pack of hungry wolves. Furlough, you've been watching for a while. Why haven't you attacked yet? A Ghostmark clan warrior at the second sky of King God Realm turned and looked at the other. These people were imprisoned for a long time, so they knew each other well. The man named Furlough was a Sea clan warrior who had lost one arm. He also had the second sky of King God Realm cultivation base. He snorted, Larky, if you want the purgatory token, you should go now. Haha. Don't worry. I won't compete against you. Go now. He and Larky were the two second sky of King God Realm warriors in this group. They understood each other, and they knew that they were all tough and cruel. They were secretly afraid of each other. Haha, I'm not in a hurry. I've been imprisoned for too long. I'm not going to act impatiently now. Larky cracked a smile, showing his yellow teeth. But I remember you saying that you have a son. His life is tough out there. Since you've been jailed, he has suffered a lot. I can't say if he would still be alive now. Hearing him, Furlough's face strained of color and snorted again. The truth was that he couldn't wait. His son suffered and was bullied frequently out there. He calculated that his son was about to break through to the Sky Realm. Furlough knew that the Sky Realm breakthrough required a lot of materials and lucky encounters. It would be better if he could have the divine pellets for support and received a good Power Upanishad from the source of Power Upanishad inheritance. His Sky Realm was an important turning point. He must leave this place. He must help his son break through. Thus, he felt panicked. Li Mu. Furlough pondered for a while before calling a first Sky of King God Realm warrior standing near him with a savage look on his face. You get in there and check it out. If you help me take the purgatory token, I promise you that I will take care of your daughter well after I get out. The warrior whose name was called hesitated with a cold look. If you won't go, then don't blame me. Furlough rolled his eyes and showed his ferocious face. You should take the chance that I'm giving you while you still can. Li Mu reared back from Furlough's furious gaze. He felt like a snake was slithering around his neck. He was scared. He hesitated for a while. Keeping his daughter in mind, he gritted his teeth. Boss, promise me. If I die and you get out, please take care of my daughter. I will, Furlough nodded, if I get out alive. Li Mu didn't say more. He bit his lips and stormed out of the crowd, dashing straight to Shiryan's cave. The crowd of prisoners and villains were restless. They gathered uncontrollably, getting inevitably closer to Shiryan's cave. At the same time, Leona and the others brightened their eyes, focusing their view on the lake to see if Shiryan would resist this attack. When he was breaking through his new realm, anyone could simply land attacks on him if he hadn't prepared. Li Mu dashed like lightning. While he was in the air, he had urged his god domain. His god body strengthened like a tree trunk. Bark grew on his skin and his body looked like a giant root of a 10,000-year-old tree. When he released his god domain, the plants around him also shook. Big branches were twisted and broken. His god domain drew the broken branches, turning them into sharp wooden swords, darting toward the cave. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wooden swords brought their sharp power and exploded one by one at the entrance. Li Mu took this chance to disappear into the cave. The people observing waited for something to happen. There was no commotion, no aura, or even a single sound. Li Mu was like a droplet that caused no ripple when fallen into the sea. The crowd of prisoners and villains were tense. They looked at the cave confusedly. An unknown chill rose in their hearts. Leona's eyes brightened again. In a relaxed manner, she picked up another piece of fruit, taking a bite while still looking at the lake. If there was nothing reported by Li Mu, it meant Shiryan had prepared something in the cave which proved that Shiryan knew what he was doing. Knowing this, Leona relaxed a little. She knew that it wouldn't be easy to kill Shiryan. Salu. You try. Larky grinned fiendishly. If you die, I will take care of your family. Now move. He was another warrior at the first Sky of King God Realm. Under such a threat, he had to jump into the cave. The same thing happened. There was no sound or commotion of a furious battle. Those who entered the cave seemed to disappear into thin air. Everybody could feel the shivers down their spines. Chapter 781, Create a Miracle. Chapter 781, Create a Miracle. Under Larky and Furlough's command, the two first Sky of King God Realm warriors disappeared like a stone that left no ripple after sinking into the ocean. Then, the prisoners, villains, and lunatics showed up. They calmed down and grimaced. From the results of the two first Sky of King God Realm warriors, Larky and Furlough's threat wouldn't be effective. No one was stupid enough to get out there and die in vain. Some didn't leave immediately. They stared at the cave entrance for a while before retreating quietly. Their silhouettes flashed, leaving no trace behind. Those who stayed didn't move, and only half of them remained. They were the ones who had a reason to leave this extreme purgatory field as quickly as possible. They had reasons to survive. In the world out there, they had someone they cared about or grudges they needed to resolve. The danger that the cave showed didn't scare them or make them leave. Larky and Furlough were of the latter type. They stayed. The two-second sky of King God realm exchanged uncertain looks. After a while, Larky suddenly said, "That kid must have arranged something in that cave. If we send a single warrior in there, he will likely be in danger. But if everyone goes in at the same time, I think the traps he has set won't work against them all." Pausing for a while, he looked at Furlough. "What do you say?" "Harumph, you know I must leave soon. How can I give up just like that?" Furlough gritted his teeth. No matter how strong he is, he must be weak while in his breakthrough to the new realm. As long as we break his barriers and see him, we can kill him easily. Many agreed with him. They soon finished discussing and joined hands to attack. They gawked for a while. Then, the onlookers started dashing forward. They turned into many silhouettes and urged their god domain, advancing towards the cave. Both Leona's group in the Purgatory Star and the two in the Grand Palace in the Dark Firmament Star felt excited again. Their eyes were glued to the lake. As they knew it would be perilous inside, they had boosted their power as much as they could, releasing the god domain. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. All of a sudden, space slits appeared at the cave entrance like floating sharp swords that sparkled dazzlingly. 3 warriors who jumped into the cave first didn't have time to scream as space slits had ripped their bodies and sucked their dismembered bodies in. They disappeared silently. Many villains screamed in fright and attempted to retreat. They didn't dare move further inside. However, as soon as the space slits appeared, they scattered. In the area where energy was gathering outside the cave, similar space slits emerged in every corner. Those space slits were long and narrow, but they were enough to dismember the warriors, leaving no trace of their prior existence. Although some were quick enough to dodge, they were attacked by the space slits. When the slits passed through them, their limbs disappeared bizarrely. Some were so unlucky that their heads disappeared into the void. Instantly, another 6 first sky of King God realm died tragically. F***CK. It's space power. My god. It's F***King Bad. A warrior cultivating space power is breaking through. Damn. Too bad. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Screams and curses resonated from the crowd. They were all ashen. They felt as if their hearts were torn apart, unable to think logically from extreme fright. Both Larky and Furlough were scared out of their wits. Those space slits had frightened them. They froze, not moving a single muscle. Leona relaxed and ate the crystal green fruits. She cast a glance at Aogu Duo, who looked pale now. She mocked, "Did you think that everybody was an idiot? He dares to break through in the extreme purgatory field. Of course he knows how to protect himself. Check it out and see the results of those idiots like you. Breaking powers Upanishad and stirring up space. This kid, is space power his main power Upanishad that is going through a breakthrough?" Karthu was baffled. He suddenly found his words. "I told you. He doesn't look like a careless man. Would he break through without arranging his defense?" In the cultivation of space power, when a warrior breaks through the important realm and creates the god domain, space slits will appear thickly around him. It seems that we didn't consider this. No wonder why he isn't scared. Rochester also understood. He grinned. Seems like this brutal kid has planned this ahead of time. Those who wanted to take his life deserve to fall. While they were joking and discussing, space slits appeared more densely at the cave entrance in the extreme purgatory field. The oncoming warriors gawked. They halted in the area filled with space slits. No one dared to move an inch. They all became seriously cautious. At this moment, a magical intent domain expanded from the cave. It seemed to fuse with earth and heaven energy covering their heads. A solitary aura flooded out. Under the wicked effects of the dead Upanishad, those who stayed suddenly felt their soul fatigue and their energy was grabbed by an invisible hand that pulled it into the cave. Fragmentary starlight flashed from time to time where earth and heaven energy had gathered. The starlight rolled like the Milky Way and became clearer. The extreme purgatory field seemed to not be able to conceal the starlight in this place. The starlight and the starry sea in outer space seemed to have a connection, creating a magnificent galaxy. thick space slits that were created by condensed space were the god domain of warriors cultivating space power Upanishad. The soul burial ground was the domain of warrior cultivating dead Upanishad, while the beautiful galaxy was the unique form of the star powers god domain. 3 different powers Upanishad performed the distinctive god domains. The inmates who had jumped into this area wept without tears. They would never have imagined that Yen, who was hiding inside this cave, could have 3 cunning and mighty powers Upanishad at the same time. And what was hard to accept the most was that all his 3 powers Upanishad could create the god domains. This was unimaginable. It goes against the cultivating natural principles of warriors in the Raging Flame star area. When a warrior broke through the king god realm, only his main power could create the god domain. No matter how profound his auxiliary powers were, they would hardly be able to create the god domain. This was why each warrior had only one god domain. Also, most of the warriors chose only one power Upanishad to cultivate for the rest of their lives. The creation of the god domain hid the magical mysteries and principles of nature. Even the great sages couldn't tell how the god domain was created or understand its mysteries. Signs of 3 different god domains created from Yan's breakthrough not only shocked the intruders, but also people in the Dark Firmament star and the Purgatory star. All 3 powers Upanishad creating the god domains. This is a miracle, Karthu muttered. How could he balance or fuse them? Rochester's eyes expressed fright. *CK that brat. Aogu Duo gritted his teeth. An evil smile hung on the corner of Leona's mouth, but she didn't say a thing. The master of the divine nation, Du Tianji, jolted up from his throne, his eyes blazing like torches. He gazed at the mirror in front of him, staying silent for a long while. His face distorted bizarrely. Princess Ziyao covered her mouth behind him as she couldn't believe what her eyes showed her. Strange, dazzling light shot out from her beautiful eyes. Her soft body shivered slightly. I don't think there are miracles in this world. I believe what I see. Du Tianli stood up from his mountain, walking to the corner and gazing at the lake. If he succeeds, he will bring another color to the Raging Flame star area. If he works for the divine nation, our territory would double shortly. No one doubted this. Leona, Karthu, Rochester, Delay, and even Aogu Duo quieted down. They didn't oppose his idea. Creating 3 god domains while breaking through to the king god realm meant that Yan's attainment in 3 powers Upanishad was all profound. At the same time, he could balance his 3 powers miraculously. They had never heard or seen anyone in the Raging Flame star area who had 3 god domains. Today, many witnessed Yan achieve such a miracle. He had filled this vacancy. His appearance told people that the martial path wasn't as narrow as they had always thought. They realized that a real, excellent warrior would not always cultivate just one power Upanishad and create only one god domain. This miracle broke this presumption, leaving a deep impression in people's hearts and revealing a brand new picture. People started contemplating. Even the master of the divine nation, the strongest warrior, Du Tianji, was baffled. He started to doubt the principles he had trusted. He couldn't help but be amazed at the magical features of the martial path. Are we all wrong about it? Du Tianji muttered. The general knowledge of warriors in the entire Raging Flame star area isn't complete, is it? Are we all wrong about the mysteries of the martial path? Is our current explanation of powers incomplete? Father, perhaps people in the higher-level continents aren't like us. They can cultivate more powers at the same time. Yan has the inheritance from that man, and that man wasn't from our Raging Flame star area. Maybe he came from another higher-level star area where people know the truth of powers Upanishad. Our understanding is shallow. At the very least, Yan has proven that warriors could be able to create the god domain of all powers Upanishad they cultivate. Ziyao looked at him, talking in a soft voice. He has opened a door for us. It makes me more determined. I must escape. I must break all the chains to see if the sky outside is this brilliant. Du Tianji gave a low shout. His eyes expressed his resolution, proving that he has finally made up his mind. Chapter 782, King God Realm. Chapter 782, King God Realm. The sea star, thick space cracks, and the soul burial ground were released. These three primitive forms of the god domain were revealed at the entrance of the cave. Some strange phenomena had happened. Prisoners of the extreme purgatory field who intruded this place froze in the air. No one dared to move. Hazardous spacelets were operating around them. If they moved, space cracks would cut their bodies. But no movement did not necessarily mean no harm. After the soul burial ground appeared, the unique features of this god domain were revealed. The prisoners soon felt their souls fatigue. They could even see the light specks that looked like fireflies flying out of their bodies. Just like the gathering energy, they congregated in that cave. Everybody was frightened and restless. Witnessing the three god domains with different attributes had shaken them. Leona, Aogu Duo, and Du Tianji, the owner of the divine nation in the faraway dark firmament star, were frightened. They realized that the principles they had believed for so many years could potentially be wrong. Shuryan's powers had opened a brand new door for those warriors. It told them that the martial path is constantly changing and that there was more than one way out. Cultivating many powers Upanishad at the same time could lead them to a wider and brighter road. No one knew what was happening to Shuryan in the cave. However, they all knew that Shuryan was in the most critical phase of his breakthrough. Once he got through this challenge, he could step up to the sky and dazzlingly suppress any youth who was believed to be a genius. Inside the cave, more and more space slits appeared in front of the cave. 3 meters from the entrance of the cave, there were cut limbs of the 2 warriors who had jumped in first. They didn't think that there were more space slits in the cave. The moment they stormed in, their bodies were divided into 5 or 7 pieces, and the larger portions of their bodies were dragged into the space slits. They would never see the bodies again. Shuryan sat indifferently inside the cave, surrounded by many space slits. From the outside, the pure earth and heaven energy that flowed looked like 5-colored lightning strikes that entangled him and slithered into his body like snakes. His body sent blazing sparks into the air. It looked like he was placed on the stone table, and the earth and heaven energy was the blacksmith that was forging him with the flaming iron hammer. To the majority of true God realm warriors, the pain of refining the god body would make them wish for death. However, Shuryan's reaction was different. He was strangely calm. He had challenged things at the Acme for his whole life. He could endure the pains normal people could even think about enduring. His tough mentality wasn't something people could comprehend. The main reason for this was his strong foundation. His body had been quenched many times. He had felt all kinds of pains and tortures. If he had to compare, his creation of the god body today wasn't very hard to endure. Thus, he looked different compared to most of the warriors. He was calm and even a little numb. Earth and heaven energy brought the true power of the world. Just like a magical knife, it carved deep marks on his body to enhance it by a level. He had swallowed the pellets he took from Zi Yao, which helped with the creation of God body. Those pellets helped thicken earth and heaven energy, creating a fierce flood and accelerating his rate of absorption. Earth and heaven energy proactively seeped through his flesh, blood, bones, internal organs, and each vessel of his body. This energy seemed to have a magical effect that flooded his entire body and enhanced his bones' toughness, tenaciousness of the vessels, muscles, and tendons. He was like a divine weapon that was processed by different energies. He slowly became unbreakable. He was now as imposing as a mountain with tremendous, pure energy. His changes weren't only in his blood and flesh, his soul altar seemed to also undergo changes. The power Upanishad tier in his 3-tiered soul altar was covered with a layer of mysterious light. However, star, space, death, and life powers Upanishad were still visible. They were all wonderfully connected with the energy in his god soul, giving him a deeper knowledge of the nature of these 3 powers Upanishad. He just sat neatly like that and patiently let his body be developed. His soul guided the 3 powers Upanishad. The god soul and the 3 powers Upanishad had fused perfectly. The 3 powers Upanishad rose magically in a deep place inside his god soul. Each power became a chaotic, shining cluster, releasing an immense halo. The lusters of the seals of Upanishad were the signs of the god domain. When he understood his seal of Upanishad more clearly, those lusters would expand gradually to magically change his soul. Thus, the space slits appeared more and more outside his cave, and their coverage also expanded. The halo of the dead Upanishad had two layers. One was vigorous, while the other was cold and desolate. The vigorous layer covered his sea of Upanishad and protected his god soul and god body. The dead layer dispersed and affected those around him, absorbing their souls. This also made the prisoners and villains not dare to move outside the cave. They slowly lost their life force. Those people were covered in the dead layer, which had pulled the light spots of their life force and drew them back to the vigorous layer to boost Shuryan's living energy and increase his strength. This also frighteningly increased the power of the absorption force of the dead layer. The dead layer took away the life force and sent it to the vigorous layer. Then, it benefited Shuryan's soul and god body, which would also boost the energy of the dead layer, making the soul burial ground more imposing. These two layers supported each other and increased their powers. And the one to receive these benefits was Shuryan himself. At the same time, the Star Sea was the performance of the Star Seal of Upanishad. The Starry Sea was the external sign of the Star Upanishad. The blinking stars in the Sea of Stars were thick and glorious. However, it was different from the dead Upanishad. The Starry Sea wouldn't initially attack living beings proactively. Shuryan needed to use his soul to control it. As he was still in the critical time of his breakthrough, naturally, he couldn't do this, which meant the mysteries of the Starry Sea God domain couldn't be performed. Even so, space slits of space power and the life absorption of the dead power were enough to keep him safe. He wasn't afraid of anyone who came to attack him. When the God domain was created, it would create a significant commotion according to some principles of nature, which led to the expansion of the domain's coverage and power. This was especially true for his space power Upanishad that created the space slits, the terrifying defense like a grand mountain. The dead Upanishad was a cunning and evil power that could attack the others proactively. As long as there were living beings near him, the dead Upanishad could show its nature and draw all of the creature's life force. Inside the cave, Shuryan stayed safe and comprehended his three seals of Upanishad and the magical powers of the god domains. He didn't notice the situations out there. Time flew hurriedly. Soon, the prisoners and villains in front of the cave didn't dare to move. Since their life force was being drawn away, they became dizzy and foolish unknowingly. With only one wrong step, they fell immediately into the space slits and died on the spot. After they died, their essence chi wouldn't scatter away. Just like the gathering energy, they flew into the cave, pouring into Shuryan's acupuncture points, becoming part of his powers. Those warriors continued to fall one after another into the space slits. Before each tragic death, the victim's life force was already too feeble. In the end, both Furlough and Larky didn't have the luck to dodge the danger. They fell dizzily into some space slits eventually. The 2-second sky of King God Realm were devoured. Their essence chi poured into the cave. Deep inside the cave, Shuryan didn't know what was happening out there. He still cultivated indifferently, refining his god body and creating the god domains. Without Shuryan's consciousness, the essence chi ancient tree in his body had expanded 3 times larger. The experts watching the scene fell silent, their eyes glued to the dark cave, waiting for something. Time flew quietly. 7 days later. Today, the god domains created by 3 different powers Upanishads suddenly disappeared. Earth and heaven energy that gathered here for a while had also gone, leaving no beam or trace. Outside the cave, cut limbs lay on the ground. No one died intact. Everyone concentrated, holding their breath as if they were waiting for something to happen. Even Leona was anxious as she didn't know the final results. After a while, a sturdy figure appeared at the cave entrance. He frowned, looking at those cut limbs on the ground. He smiled evilly, then walked away. He did it. He really did it. Dutionlo couldn't hold his surprise and screamed, "It seems like cultivating many powers at the same time is possible. Our belief has to change because of this kid. A man can have 3 god domains at the same time, each of them in perfect harmony with the others. This man is a miracle," Karthu said emotionally. I think his real fighting in the extreme purgatory field starts from now. Haha, at the true God realm, he could kill the first sky of King God realm warriors. Today, he has finally reached the King God realm. I think that the opponents he fights will change from now. Rochester looked at Aoguduo and laughed slightly. The hidden meaning in his words was explicit. Aogera has only the second sky of King God realm. Would he become Shuriyan's prey? Aoguduo, be prepared to give me a life star. Leona smiled darkly. Joy filled her eyes as she knew she was not wrong. Dash. Dark firmament star. Zaoer, your fortune isn't bad. You've met such a magical kid. Du Tianji glared at Ziyao before smiling strangely. Aogera is dead. I'm afraid that kid isn't weaker than him. If they encounter each other, I'm not sure who would win. He had always evaluated Aogera with high value. However, at this moment, he wasn't sure of anything. At this moment, Shuriyan had overturned his negative situation, breaking through to the King God realm, striding to a brand new level. Chapter 783, Where the Domains. Chapter 783, Where the Domains. Shuriyan had never felt so fresh and powerful before. The King God realm in the Grace mainland was the highest existence. He had been on that continent for so long, but he had never seen anyone at the King God realm. Bao Ao, Jiaji, Kanti, and even Xianming had tried for their whole life to reach the King God realm. However, due to the energy-draining situation in the Grace mainland, they were limited. Being unable to break through to this realm was the greatest regret of their lives. The time he had stayed in the Raging Flame Star area wasn't too long. It was just 8 or 9 years. However, in this short period, he had ascended from the true God realm directly to the King God realm and created the God domains. And he got 3 marvelous God domains. Strolling through the extreme purgatory field, Shuriyan let all of his heaven flames fly back to the soul altar. He didn't need to be cautious anymore. He was so confident. He believed that in the extreme purgatory field now, only the third sky of King God realm warriors could trouble him. And even they wouldn't be able to kill him. Walking step by step, he immersed in the joy of the magical God domains. Never had he felt so happy before. From just a single thought, the God domain of the dead Upanishad was activated. A 20-meter radius around Shuriyan was the maximum coverage of his dead domain. Big trees yellowed, flowers shriveled, and insects stopped crying. With another thought, the starry sea appeared. Magical starlight dots were created by his energy. They scattered beautifully and gloriously everywhere. His soul altar spun slightly and his space power had activated its God domain. A powerful energy that could control space was urged. Within 20 meters around him, the wind stopped, foliage froze, and even earth and heaven energy were restrained. It couldn't move anymore. The 3 powers Upanishad included death and life, star, and space would create the God domain as his God soul flickered. The 3 God domains had their own magical features. While moving, he tried them from time to time restlessly. Staying inside the God domain of the dead and life power Upanishad, Shuriyan could absorb the energy of living beings around him to strengthen himself. While the creatures themselves didn't notice, they had their soul energy taken out. The God domain created by Star Power Upanishad was a space full of stars. Under this starry dome, his star martial spirit became sensitive. As his soul flickered, he could immediately hide in any star. Within 20 meters, he could change his location, disappear and reappear in any starlight dots, giving them his magnificent powers to attack his enemies. The God domain created by space power wasn't as dangerous as the spacelets when he broke through the new realm. Shuriyan understood that only a deeper understanding of space power Upanishad and the God domain could help him create the spacelets that shielded him. When he gets to this point, he knew that no one would dare approach or ambush him. Space God domain had more magical features. Space of area that this God domain covering was restrained tightly. He only needed to urge his power and flicker a thought for all things inside his God domain, including air, energy, rock, and foliage to be imprisoned. Imprisonment was the basic specialty of Space Upanishad, one of the derived foundations of space power. He believed that in a battle with an opponent, urging his space power and creating the god domain would detain the other's body and soul in his space. Unless the other was prepared or had a force that was mighty enough to untie his bind, that warrior would simply be killed. Breaking through the king god realm had given him chances to create 3 god domains and enlarge his essence chi ancient tree several times. Anyway, the benefits he had harvested weren't that simple. The god body is another advantage he got now. At this moment, the recovery ability of his immortal martial spirit had been upgraded. At the same time, his petrification martial spirit was also enhanced. His sturdy physique had reached a new level, which could be considered morbidly abnormal under this great time of quenching by earth and heaven energy. He had tried and found that even the 3 bone thorns he had forged couldn't break the defense of his god body. He would need to use the maximum power to even pierce through his body. Ordinary king god realm warriors who dared to engage in close combat with him would be torn apart, leaving nothing, not even the bone dust. Due to his strong foundation and excellent body conditions, the god body he had condensed wasn't something ordinary king god realm warriors could compare to. He had a premonition that even the 3rd sky of king god realm warriors couldn't have a tough god body like his. As his power had been improved many times, his confidence was boosted. He believed that if he had had his today's realm in the solar star exploding fragment field that year, even if he didn't manipulate the flaming meteorites, he could have fought bloody slaughterer Katua without much struggle. After his realm was upgraded, his vision widened, and he had a huge confidence boost. He decided not to hunt first sky of king god realm warriors. His main targets were the prisoners and the villains at the 2nd sky of king god realm now. Once the purgatory token had reported the living energy of 2nd sky of king god realm warriors, he would attack them proactively. This would help him accumulate immortal demon blood. Hovering above a lake in the extreme purgatory field, Shiryan's face was cold and harsh. A bloodthirsty gleam flashed in his eyes. While his thought flickered, so many stars twirled around his body, arraying a magical formation. Abruptly, he attacked someone in front of him. It was a Sea Clan brutal butcher at the 2nd sky of King God Realm. They had fought for a half a day already. The other had thought that he had finally found a soft persimmon that he could squeeze to get a purgatory token. Shortly, he knew he was wrong. Shiryan wasn't a soft persimmon, but a ferocious beast that didn't bare its fangs. The god domain of his star power was created. Shiryan's figure flashed in the starlight. Sometimes he disappeared, leaving no aura. The brutal Sea Clan man had water power. He was unceasingly expanding his god domain. 10,000 tons of water in the lake rolled into the sky, morphing into rough dragons. They attacked Shiryan furiously. Wahaha. Shiryan sneered, waiting until the water dragons storming into his star god domain. He immediately created Space Power Upanishad, creating the god domain. Transparent water dragons storming toward him suddenly halted in the air. They froze bizarrely in front of him, unable to even wiggle. Disperse! Shiryan pointed, and a strange light shot out, hitting each water dragon. Furious sounds of water flowing echoed. Those water dragons had turned back into currents of water, falling into the lake underneath. His figure moved. The lake was still, the wind stopped moving, and energy was restrained where he hovered. Except him, anything in his god domain couldn't move. The Sea Clan warrior grimaced. The 3 god domains had almost collapsed his mentality. Every time he thought that he could do it, Shiryan's god domain changed to another kind, which made all his attacks fail. On the still lake, Shiryan sauntered. Suddenly, he roared like a savage beast, disappearing into the starlight. In the next moment, he reappeared next to that Sea Clan expert. He retrieved his god domain and bumped into the other with his physical strength. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion echoed from the transparent water barrier created by the Sea Clan expert. His crystal-clear defense shattered like pieces of jade. Water light shot out. Shiryan laughed louder, marching toward that warrior, engaging in a battle inside his god domain. He bombarded him with star power. Stars spun and shot towards him. The power of his body continued expanding endlessly. Light spots that scattered from the shattered crystal wall fiercely pierced his god body. However, they couldn't damage him. Space imprisonment. While he was battling enthusiastically, Shi Yan suddenly let out a low shout. The man in his god domain halted as if he was tied by so many ropes in the air. He didn't even move. Shi Yan smiled while walking toward him. He patted the man's head. His big head exploded. Blood and brains scattered. Retrieving his god domain and taking in almost all of the essence chi in that dead man's body, Shi Yan grinned before standing up. Half a year had passed unknowingly. Shi Yan became a god of slaughter in the extreme purgatory field. Wherever he passed through, any villains he could sense had become a source of his immortal demon blood. During this period, he had accumulated experiences in using the god domains through many battles. His understanding of the 3 god domains gradually became profound. After each battle, he would quiet down and review to find the advantages and disadvantages of the god domains. In the next battle, he would try to minimize the disadvantages and promote the intimidating features of his god domains. After half a year of battling, he became fluent in using god domains. He didn't feel shaky when combining the power of the 3 powers. He gradually started to understand the secret of coordinating the 3 powers to reach its most powerful potential. Among the prisoners and villains he had killed, not only the first sky of King God Realm, at least 10 second sky of King God Realm prisoners were erased. The number of immortal demon blood he had accumulated was almost 1,000 drops. He used the immortal demon blood to replace his own blood. In his eyes, this event was getting closer. He thought that if he had enough time and the number of brutal persons in the extreme purgatory field was adequate, perhaps he could finish his blood replacement here. The vast extreme purgatory field was worth the most magical place in the entire Raging Flame Star area. In this place, his perception of powers Upanishad had become much sensitive. After each battle, he always had a new harvest. His perception and understanding of the 3 power Upanishads had increased every day. Today, while he was searching his praise, he met his acquaintances, Yalin and Taimu. Their situation was apparently not good. They had wounds all over their bodies. They were distressed as if they were trying to run away from someone. They were moving towards him. Shi Yan was surprised. Chapter 784, The Cunning Old Fellow. Chapter 784, The Cunning Old Fellow, _ Yalin and Taimu were both at the second sky of King God Realm. They had followed Karthu for many years, so they must have various fighting experiences. Who could make them run with such haste like this? Stop! Shi Yan suddenly shouted. Yalin and Taimu didn't stop. In fact, upon seeing him, they started to attack. Yalin cultivated the Earth Power Upanishad. As soon as she activated her god domain, the land in her area suddenly twirled. Boundless earth energy immediately turned into a mist of dust, snatching over Shi Yan. Taimu didn't hesitate. Gusts flew around his body. The wind blades sparkled like shining knives, cutting hundreds of trees around him into pieces. Since they had been together for a while in the gravitational room, Shi Yan understood their powers Upanishad well. They were using wind and earth powers Upanishad. Once they urged the god domains, they could cooperate well, which made people not be able to fly to the sky or to get underground seeking escape. This is also why Karthu let them 2 enter the extreme purgatory field together. The 2 powers Upanishad exploded together. The gray dust rolled on the ground, working with the tornadoes in the air, covering Shi Yan's instantly. Shi Yan's consciousness was affected badly. Staying in that gray area, he couldn't locate their positions. Energy tornadoes were marching furiously, uprooting the giant trees. Such energy movement was strong enough to cut his body into small pieces. It was different from the prisoners Shi Yan had encountered. Yalin and Taimu's forces were tremendous individuals as their understanding of earth and heaven powers were more profound. Their god domains had coordinated their attack together. After Shi Yan got covered, he couldn't get rid of it. The tornado rolled his body into the air, spinning it. Shi Yan felt dizzy immediately. Yalin and Taimu were the experienced warriors with long battling times in outer space. They had so many divine pellets. They trained their bodies marvelously while also using their wonderful powers Upanishad. As Shuryen stayed in their god domains, he had to be very careful. He immediately released his space god domain. Shortly, the energies of Earth and Tornado were frozen for 3 seconds. But he could hold them only for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, their 2 powers got rid of his constraint and moved towards him again. However, 3 seconds to the King God Realm warriors like Shuryen were more than enough. Especially in fighting, it was enough for him to do many things. He escaped Yalin and Taimu's god domain, approaching them shortly. He shouted angrily, "What the heck are you doing?" While shouting at him, he accumulated the energy of his god body. Special powers of his twirled around him. Starlight spots as brilliant as diamonds scattered around him thickly. Star Upanishad. Taimu screamed in astonishment. He suddenly woke up, shouting, "Yalin, he's real." Yalin was startled. She scrutinized Shuryen and then said, "In the gravitational field, you and I talked. How many siblings do I have?" An older brother and a younger sister. Shuryen frowned skeptically. "What did you ask that for?" Yalin calmed down, exhaling in relief. "So you're real." Taimu looked like he had finally put the burden aside. He panted. "I thought it came again. F***ck it. That freak has almost made me collapse mentally. So many illusions. I can't help it anymore. I can't differentiate reality from an illusion." Shuryen was surprised. "What did you encounter?" The two retrieved their powers. The god domains disappeared. The area became calm again. "You've broken through?" Taimu's eyes were sharp, screaming with astonishment. "You've broken through in this extreme purgatory field?" Yalin was frightened. She continued shouting, "Monster." Frowning, Shuryen expressed his impatience. "True. I've broken through, but it doesn't matter right now. Tell me what happened. What did you do? Why did you need to hide? Who in this extreme purgatory field could put you into such a disordered state? Aogera's team or Madame Leona's team?" "None of them." Yalin and Taimu forced a smile. "Those prisoners? They besieged you." Shuryen was surprised, asking disbelievingly. "Although they aren't weak, you guys are experienced warriors who have been through perilous training." "What happened?" "An old fellow at the third sky of King God Realm. He cultivates a peculiar power Upanishad that could create illusions. People, scenes, rocks, rivers, mountains. He can create everything you can name, just like a real world." Taimu was still scared. "In his illusions, we were attacked by so many friends and even Sir Karthu. We almost got killed. Then, when we diverged, we would meet the illusion of each other. We would be ambushed wickedly. We are exhausted. He has been chasing us this entire time." Yalin felt helpless. "Although the warriors in the extreme purgatory field are all at the King God Realm, we aren't afraid of them when we join hands. However, that man has a special power. Until now, we haven't seen his real face. We only heard his sinister laughter." Shuryen couldn't help but be stern. "Third sky of King God Realm? He knows how to create illusionary worlds and creatures. You guys couldn't use the soul consciousness to detect it. Our realm is lower than his. We can't break the illusion. The illusionary characters he created also have living energy fluctuations. We can't say if it's real or not." Taimu shook his head, unable to avoid a headache. "Anyway, his power Upanishad's lethality isn't good. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived until now. However, after getting deceived so many times, we're exhausted." "Seems like your trouble isn't small," Shuryen contemplated and then smiled. "If we meet him, just join hands. Is that old man still here?" Then, his soul consciousness checked the purgatory token on his waist. Shuryen sensed carefully for a while, but he didn't find any beam of living energy. He relaxed his vigilance. "I'm sure he is around here. This cunning old fellow is like a resentful ghost that will never disperse. He hasn't left yet. OF***ck. He has targeted us for our purgatory token. It would help him survive." Taimu cursed, facing the sky and yelling indignantly. Hey F asterisk king bastard, if you have the guts, come here and fight. What is interesting about your stealthy operations? Hee hee hee. I like to hide the head and show the tail. I don't dare meet people. You guys should show mercy to me. A voice floated in the vast forest like a wind they couldn't catch or locate. Interesting. Another prey at the first sky of King God realm. Hee hee hee, I'm even more certain now that I could get out of this damn place. The sound of the voice wound around many times, sounding close occasionally and far away at other times. Shi Yan changed his visage. He sensed the purgatory token the second time. His face darkened as he muttered. He can avoid the purgatory token sensing. Taimu and Yalan nodded miserably. How could he do that? Shi Yan was baffled. My purgatory token has never failed in the extreme purgatory field. It's obvious that the old man's around, but we can't detect his living trace. We don't know. This is his dangerous feature. With the purgatory token, we would be the hunters. But now, he knows where we are, but we can't detect him. We are under the light while he stays in the dark. We've become his prey. Yalan frowned and pulled her hair. This cunning old man is familiar with the extreme purgatory field. Seems like he hasn't been here only once. He can use his understanding of the topography and the special situation of each location to create illusions. If he didn't understand the terrain here like it was the back of his hand, he couldn't be so subtle. Little girl, you're right. Until today, I've been participating in the extreme purgatory field 5 times. I've been the prey every time. However, I've been living for well over 250 years. Hee hee hee, the extreme purgatory field is a good place. If I haven't reached the bottleneck of my realm and I can't make a good use of the conditions here, I wouldn't have to leave urgently. Perhaps I could give you a chance to live. The inwardly evil-hearted ridicule arose timely as if he was about to ambush. No matter how much they lowered their voices, he could still hear them clearly. What he had said paled Shi Yan, Yalan, and Taimu. Participating in the extreme purgatory field 5 times meant that he has been in the extreme purgatory field for at least 250 years. He was a condemned to death felon 200 years ago. As he was able to withstand the extreme purgatory field 5 times, he was definitely a tough character. According to him, if he hadn't reached the bottleneck of the peak of the King God realm, he would stay for more. With such a character watching them and their purgatory token, Yalan and Taimu didn't know what to say. They could only blame their bad luck. In fact, I'm a nice guy. Actually, I don't need your lives. If you guys give me a purgatory token, I won't continue watching you guys anymore. How does it sound? The old man giggled in the dark, talking sinisterly. Your little buddy at the first sky of King God realm is the weakest. It should be easy to kill him, right? Okay. Kill him and you will have an extra purgatory token to give to me. I'll let you guys go. What do you think? This old fellow said he was cunning and wicked enough to attempt to tear apart the relationship between Shi Yan and the other two. Hearing his words, Yalan and Taimu became silent. Their eyes sparkled strangely. Shi Yan shuddered inwardly. He couldn't help but snort. He looked at the two coldly and frowned, waiting for their decision. There are no friends in the extreme purgatory field. Except for oneself, one shouldn't trust anyone else. This is what Yalan and Taimu had taught him before. Today, what they taught finally surfaced. Chapter 785, Thousand Fantasy Fields Domain. Chapter 785, Thousand Fantasy Fields Domain. Outside the extreme purgatory field, Du Tianlu and the 5 great feudal vassals were frowning as they had no idea what was happening in the crystal mirror lake. A corner of the lake was covered by gray mist which concealed everything. Shi Yan, Yalan, and Taimu were there. Karthu's face darkened. The light sparkling in his eyes showed his fright. He turned and shouted at Du Tianlu, "What is happening? The last time I saw my 2 soldiers was 3 days ago. Where did that gray mist come from? Why does it hinder our view?" Du Tianlu frowned as he couldn't explain, either. "I'm not sure. Perhaps someone who knows the mysteries of the extreme purgatory field has blocked the view from the outside, preventing us from seeing what is happening there." "Who is that?" Karthu snorted. "How are my 2 troopers?" Shaking his head, Du Tianlu answered begrudgingly, I don't know, either. I'm not the ones who designed this extreme purgatory field. It is a mysterious natural formation that is intertwined with the will of earth and heaven. Before our king was throned, the extreme purgatory field had existed. It is the most magical area of our divine nation. I don't wish to learn all of its mysteries. There is trouble now. Shi Yan is also there, and we don't know what is going on. Rochester spread his arms and shrugged. I'm interested in this boy the most. But now, I can't see anything. It has become too boring. Yalin and Taimu would soon face Shi Yan. I don't know what would happen between them. Delay chuckled. Although Yalin and Taimu weren't ordinary, Shi Yan has reached the King God realm. During this time, he has killed many warriors within the same realm. I'm really curious. Karthu's face grimaced. Of course, he knew that Shi Yan was tough. They had been watching Shi Yan the whole time. They paid attention to each of his battles. They noticed that the way he used energy and his domains were getting more profound day by day. They weren't surprised anymore seeing Shi Yan fight warriors whose realm was higher than his. None of the normal warriors at the second sky of King God realm could flee from his hunt. After half a year, at least 10 warriors had died in his hands. While they hadn't noticed, the number of prisoners Shi Yan had killed had surpassed the records of Delay, Yalin, and Taimu, and the 2 warriors under Rochester's command. His record was just a bit fewer than Leona's team and Aogera's team. According to the current situation, it would not be long before Shi Yan's record surpassed Aogera's. In the most critical time, Shi Yan, Yalin, and Taimu were all covered in the thick gray mist. As they couldn't see what was happening inside, everybody was irritated. Seems like someone is very familiar with the extreme purgatory field. He can affect the energy moving inside and stay hidden from our view. This one is experienced and cunning. I think he will have a close fight against Shi Yan soon, said Leona, frowning. Everybody was curious. They concentrated and gazed at the lake down there, but they couldn't see anything. Besides them, the master of the divine nation in the dark firmament star also frowned, his face cold and harsh. Father, what is happening? Why can't you see? Ziyao was surprised. When the extreme purgatory field opened, wasn't it under your control? Du Tianji's eyes sparkled with a strange light. He contemplated for a while before saying slowly, I know how to open it, but I did not make it. When I got the divine nation that year, the extreme purgatory field had already existed. It has been there for tens of thousands of years. An imperial master of our divine nation had used the wonderful natural formation of the extreme purgatory field to make it. The mysteries in that formation are the most subtle and magnificent ones. I'm not good at this evil stuff. Of course, I don't know all of its mysteries. Imperial Master? Ziyao was shaken. The divine nation hasn't had an imperial master for quite a long time. It's true. The imperial master position has been vacant for so many years. I wanted to offer him that position, but he rejected it. A bit of loss sparkled in Du Tianji's eyes. Ziyao knew who he was talking about. The old man secluding in the solar star exploding fragment field was one of the top alchemists in the Raging Flame star area. Several hundred years ago, he was famous in this star area. The previous imperial masters of our divine nations were all famous. They had deep understanding of the nature of powers Upanishad. Our source of power Upanishad inheritance was created by them. Unfortunately, there hasn't been an imperial master for several monarchies before my reign. Also, no one is qualified enough to hold this position. Du Tianji sighed. Usually, the imperial master will be in charge of the extreme purgatory field. But we don't have a suitable candidate, so I have to take charge myself. However, I've dedicated my life to the acme of power, so I didn't study about the Heaven Way evil techniques. My understanding of the extreme purgatory field isn't deep enough, so you don't know the reasons why. Yes! This limitless divine mirror of mine was made by the last imperial master of our divine nation. If it couldn't reflect the real situation of the extreme purgatory field there, I have no other alternative. What are the requirements to become the imperial master? Top-grade blacksmith and alchemist. He must acquire a firm grasp of natural formations, understand the nature of powers, be able to refine and force divine-grade pellets and tools. He must also be able to carve formations, barriers, and restrictions, and achieve the best merit for the divine nation. Oh, Shuriyan's a blacksmith too. Blacksmith? Du Tianji burst out laughing, shaking his head. This kid cultivates mixed powers indeed. He is greedy enough to have a bit of everything. Perhaps he is just an amateur blacksmith without a significant attainment. He can forge divine-grade tools. Divine grade? Du Tianji was surprised. He couldn't help but shout, "How could it be?" I saw it with my own eyes. Du Tianji's face changed. He got startled and expression was odd. Dash. Extreme purgatory field. The cunning, old man was still trying to drive a wedge between Shuriyan and the other two. You know, I'm only one person here, so I need only one token. Even if I had more, it would be useless. I just want to get out of here alive. I don't want to be imprisoned in the extreme purgatory field. Our deal is quite simple. You kill that boy and give me his purgatory token. I will leave you alone. Simple, eh? He buzzed nonstop like a fly trying to manipulate Taimu and Yalan. You two are the second sky of King God Realm warriors, and you coordinate well. If I have to kill you, I have to use a lot of my energy. Perhaps I can be hurt. But he is different. He is only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base, and he is broken through just recently. If you kill him for me, I don't need to use my powers and you can get rid of me. We all end up happy. What do you think? That old fellow used cruel and sinister words which had poked right at their weakest nerves. His plan seemed to work. Yalan and Taimu looked touched, their faces uncertain. Shuriyan was calm, but he was on guard. Actually, he didn't have a deep relationship with Taimu and Yalan. They had only met several times and talked a bit in the gravitational fields. This kind of relationship had no foundation. If they want to kill him to save their lives, Shuriyan thought it would be possible. He stood and squinted. All of a sudden, he sat down quietly right in front of Yalan and Taimu. He stooped, breathing regularly as if he was musing on something. Yalan and Taimu looked at him with confused and uncertain faces. The seducing voice of the cunning fellow continued to attack at their weakest points. Shuriyan didn't say anything. He closed his eyes like he was sleeping. He looked defenseless. His aura was retrieved. Yalan and Taimu's minds struggled for a while. They exchanged looks like they had finally made up their minds. They sat down cross-legged like Shuriyan had done and studied their affected mind. Slowly, they pulled themselves together. Damn you, you mean and shameless bastard. I almost got tricked. Taimu was foul-mouthed. Come if you do have power. Come kill the three of us. You mother of asterisk cur, stop using your tricks. Shuriyan waited in silence with closed eyes. He grinned and he relaxed his tense nerves. Brilliant starlight spots appeared gloriously in the area of 20 meters around Shuriyan. The lights were blinding as the stars spun mysteriously around him. Yalan and Taimu maintained a safe distance from Shuriyan. They all released the god domains. They formed a triangle, but their god domain didn't overlap. All were waiting in silence. If you really want to court death, don't blame me. Sigh, too stupid. It's obviously an easy choice. Why do you make it more complicated like this? The floating voice of the old man swayed. Sometimes it was near them, and the other times it was far away. At the moment his voice arose, gray mist overflowed quietly. They covered the three of them instantly. Their god domains had no strange reactions or detected any unique energy fluctuation. It seemed this gray mist was just a normal cloud without any magical effects. However, the soul altars of Shuriyan's group were tense right after that gray mist engulfed them. It was like that mist had carried along some unknown dangers. Their soul altars suddenly shook. Shuriyan's god soul trembled while his face changed. He opened his eyes all of a sudden. Shadows started to appear next to him. Those silhouettes sat on the ground. They were Yalan, Taimu, and Shuriyan himself. Even the god domains looked alike. The one sitting on his left looked identical to him. That Shuriyan opened his eyes, looking around with astonishment. His bearings were exactly the same as Shuriyan's, giving him an illusion of watching himself in the mirror. Just like that figure, sitting not far from him were more than 10 Yalan and Taimu. All of them had clear living energy fluctuations. The purgatory token on his waist all of a sudden signaled countless of lives. When Shiryen looked at that man, the man was looking back at him, too. While Shiryen was perplexed, an evil smile beamed on the face that was identical to his. Shiryen shouted inwardly. He didn't think much, but changed his god domain to the space-restraining domain. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.